This boy tried to overcome magic. In this world, mages reign supreme, while those without magic are rejected. Oscar, even though he was a genius sword saint, never awakened magic, but he was reborn years into the past, back when he was just a boy. And now, as a military genius, he enters the academy and crushes all the students. Flying over the burning city, a great monster spreads destruction everywhere. Amidst the flames, people run desperately, trying to save their own lives. Watching the creature, a mage and a warrior prepare to face the threat. Focusing his energy, the mage uses his staff to summon magic circles. With his preparation complete, he positions himself to unleash a great power. Then, several strikes are launched at the creature as it flies toward them. Even while taking the hits, the monster continues to charge at them with fury. The magic explodes with full force, but it seems to have no effect on it. From a distance, the other mages watch, realizing the attack has failed. The creature then dives swiftly, preparing for a counterattack. As the warrior charges forward, he strikes a direct blow against the monster's body. His blade, however, shatters upon impact with the tough scales. Realizing his failure, he is startled by the creature's incredible resilience. Without wasting time, the monster retaliates with a strike right in front of him. He is hit head-on, sent flying by the impact. Seeing the fallen warrior, the young man panics at the desperate situation, but at that moment, a skilled swordsman appears to face the creature. With his support team, he readies himself for battle against the monster. Leaping from below, he lands a precise strike right on the target's chest. Struck squarely, the creature recoils, letting out a massive roar. Reflected in the monster's eye, his precise attack hits a vital point. Landing safely, he watches the creature's shadow dissolve. After the battle, he simply turns and sheathes his sword. Revealing his identity, he is Oscar, known as the Sword Saint. Surrounded by the survivors, they thank him for saving them. He then tells them he'll leave the rest of the work to them. Ignoring their calls, he simply turns and starts to walk away. Passing by a father and son, he remembers a moment from his past. In a memory, a little girl says that what she's seeing is very beautiful. A man then explains to her that it's what they call magic. With a wand, he created various particles that floated in the air. Despite everything, he still had a somewhat distant and thoughtful look. Seeing his strength, a family watched him with great admiration for his deeds. In his memory, a little girl gazed in awe at that same spectacle, just like himself, who also watched everything with a huge smile. Even though he was strong, he still carried the same desire he had for magic. As a child, he could even create small spells with his own hands. Changing scenes in a mountainous region, he began his daily training. Holding a wooden sword, he prepared for another repetition. Swinging the sword, he moved it with full force, cutting through the air. From a distance, two young people watched their master training alone in the middle of a field. Curious, she asks if he trains every day, and the young man confirms. Over the years, his feet have sunk into the ground in that very spot. He explains that the continuous training ended up forming that huge crater. Ignoring them, the master just turns and raises his sword. The student watches him with a surprised expression on her face. He then asks what the scroll is that she's holding. She then remembers the message and immediately shouts for her master. Running towards him, she tells him a letter has arrived from the capital. As he reads the letter, he sees his student ask if it's bad news. He says it's a medal, and complains that they should have checked his schedule. Laughing, she says that with his achievements, he could have a high-ranking position. Complaining about factions, he says he wouldn't be able to train well in a place like that. The student then comments that he must really love the sword. Looking to the side, he seems to reflect on what she just said. With a slight smile, he says it's not like he enjoys it that much. Revealing his past, he says he chose the sword on his father's orders. Completely surprised, the student is speechless upon hearing that revelation. He confirms that he didn't choose the path of the swordsman of his own free will. Looking at her, he says he envies her for having a talent for the sword. She says she joined the academy of her own volition, but now she's scared. Clutching her clothes, she shows she's very nervous about the situation. It's explained that mages and swordsmen use different circuits for their power. Mixing the two different energies causes a total collapse in the user's body. For this reason, the choice between the two paths defines your entire life. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he tries to calm his young apprentice. He then advises that if she's worried, she should just swing her sword. With a smile, she replies that she understands and thanks her master for the advice. Later, lying in his bed, the master rests alone in his room. He then thinks that he has no right to say that to his disciple. Remembering her words, he recalls that she envies him for his talent. Looking at his own hand, he wonders what it would be like to have a talent for magic. He then repeats the advice he gave, telling himself to just swing the sword. Suddenly, he senses something strange and opens his eyes, looking to the side. Outside the house, a huge explosion suddenly occurs. Watching the burning house, a group of cloaked mages watches from a distance. Leading the group, One of them holds a staff, ready for battle. As they talk, one mage asks if they got him, but another tells him not to let his guard down. Leaping from the rubble, the master suddenly appears, surprising one of the mages. Running toward the enemies, he realizes they are very powerful mages. He then tries to identify which of them is the leader of the mysterious group. Giving the order, the leader commands all the other mages to prepare their attack. Holding his sword, the master prepares to face all the enemies there. Dodging the blows, he leaps over the attacks to counterattack. Getting close, he lands a direct hit on one of the cloaked mages. Then he notices something, and his face fills with surprise and worry. Taking the student hostage, the leader threatens him, ordering him to lower his sword. Tied up and gagged, the girl is terrified of being held hostage. He asks what their objective is, and the leader replies that it's his life. Confused, he says he doesn't remember doing anything to be so hated. With a smile, the leader says he figured he wouldn't remember. Another mage says they cannot forgive his existence with so much talent. Not understanding at all, he asks what they were talking about. The leader says he doesn't need to understand, since he's going to die there. He then looks toward his student, who is still a hostage. Shouting, the student tells her master not to worry about her life. Hearing that, he looks at her with an expression of pure determination. Holding his sword, he says he finally understands the whole situation. Surprised by the change, the leader of the mages doesn't understand what's happening. He warns that their plan has failed and that they shouldn't have underestimated his disciple. The mage holding her hostage panics at the situation. Standing still, he turns his back as the ice strikes fly toward him. At high speed, the ice strikes race to hit him head on. After the impact, a large cloud of smoke rises from the spot. Initially confident, the leader is startled to see what has happened. Impressed, the leader comments on the girl's courage for taking such a risk. With his body pierced, the master protects her, saying that's how swordsmen are. Seeing her master gravely wounded, the student runs desperately to him. Believing they've won, the mages leave, talking about his wasted talent. She then asks why he did that, getting so hurt for her sake. With a smile, he replies that he's a swordsman too, just like her. Crying, she says she was also prepared to die during that battle. She blames herself, but he tells her it wasn't her fault. Unable to accept it, the student keeps crying while holding her master. With his last bit of strength, he tries to say something but can't. In his mind, he regrets not having become a mage to protect her. He then admits that all this time, he had always wanted to use magic. To run from the truth, he just kept swinging his sword non-stop. Despite all the admiration, he never forgot his true dream. Nothing compared to the happiness he felt when he saw magic as a child. Extending his hand toward the sky, he finds himself in an unknown place. He then gets up, looking at his hand, completely confused by the situation. Placing a hand on his head, he realizes he should have died. Sitting, he looks around and wonders where he is. Seeing the landscape, he recognizes it as his old childhood village. Remembering his death, he's confused about still being alive in this place. Next to his sword, he finds a letter and wonders what it is. Opening the letter, he's completely surprised by what's written inside. Holding the invitations, he sees they're from the two biggest academies in the kingdom. At 15, every young person receives an invitation to either the Academy of Magic or swordsmanship. After choosing, the candidate must take the letter to the academy's gate. With the letter in hand, he notices his reflection in front of him. Questioning himself, he begins to wonder if he has really returned to the past. He then realizes he's back at 14, before he became a swordsman. When someone approaches, he just stays crouched, looking at the ground. Appearing, his father asks what he's doing there alone, calling his name. Startled, he quickly stands up, exclaiming that it's his father. Seeing his father and the others, he realizes that if he's back, his father is alive. His father says he looks arrogant and has been neglecting his training. Just looking at the horizon, the boy remains silent, saying nothing. Back then, all he thought about was how to tell his father about his desire for magic. Being a swordmaster, his father was responsible for training many disciples. As his son, he naturally began to learn the way of the sword as well. In a memory, he runs excitedly, saying someone showed him magic earlier. With great joy, he described how radiant and beautiful magic seemed to be. With a serious expression, his father would say that magic was a technique for the weak. Grabbing his shoulders, he orders that as his son, he would use the sword. Unable to abandon the sword, he continued to train, even while wishing to use magic. Back in the present, he stands up and faces his future with determination. Gripping the sword tightly, he thinks that he's had enough of that ending. Determined, he affirms that in this life, he will follow the path he truly wants to follow. His father then asks again why he was neglecting his training. Turning his face away, he replies that he has already spent a lifetime with the sword. Surprised by the answer, his father just stares at him in silence. Unleashing his power, he summons several energy swords around him. One of his men feels the pressure, forced back by the power. The other two are thrown to the ground, unable to withstand the force he released. Even with all that power, The boy remains still, facing his father. Amazed, one of the men wonders how he can be so calm. Ignoring the pressure, he stands firm, looking at his father without backing down. His father watches him, realizing his son wasn't just playing around. Dispelling the technique, he says it seems he wasn't just messing around. Approaching, he places a hand on his son's shoulder, acknowledging his strength. He then says that one day he will be able to entrust his guild to him. Seeing this, the other men look at the young boy with envy. With a faint smile, his father turns and starts to walk away. Thinking about his father, he stands there, reflecting on that moment. Running towards him, he hugs his father from behind with all his might. Two men surround him, saying they were eager to see him again. With a smile, one of them offers to give him a little sword lesson. Remembering the past, he realizes those guys were there before too. They were his training partners, whom he always fought at his father's request. But after they awakened their energy, they always left him aside. Taking the opportunity, they would take out their frustrations on him, pretending to teach him. Back in the present, he prepares for combat against that same man. Telling him to hurry, the man channels his energy into the wooden sword. The presence of that energy created a power gap his technique couldn't overcome. Ignoring the challenge, he turns and starts walking towards the river. Holding his sword, he's thankful for everything that has happened so far. Seeing this, the man is completely shocked, not understanding his strange behavior. Throwing the sword into the water, he surprises his rival, who stumbles at the move. Calling him a coward, the others shout, asking if he plans to run from the fight. Furious, the man calls him a disgrace, preparing to strike. With his back to all of them, he faces the horizon, completely ignoring their taunts. With a smile, he says he will be a mage and will no longer use the sword. Shouting that he won't go easy, he charges forward with his wooden sword. Watching the attack, he analyzes the movements of his former training partner. His rival used sword energy to strengthen his entire body, but with a barrier, he easily blocks the blow, shocking his opponent. He then says that it's not enough to defeat him. Furious, the rival grinds his teeth, refusing to accept the direct provocation. Attacking with fury, he tries to land several blows but misses every one. He then realizes he's fallen into the old habit of fighting like it's just a training session. Outraged, he shouts, asking why he can't land a single hit. Extending his hand, he prepares to end the fight once and for all. With a swift move, he easily disarms his opponent. Stepping on the sword, he lands a blow that knocks his rival to the ground. On the ground, the rival furiously yells, calling him a bastard. Standing before him, he prepares to deliver the final blow. He then asks why he would throw away his advantage against a disarmed opponent. Looking back, he sees the others holding back the furious rival. After a moment of thought, he figures this will keep his rival away for a while. Remembering the past, he recalls how his father forcefully awakened his energy. To avoid the same mistake, he decides he will master magic first. Continuing on his way, he walks alone on a road through the forest. Wiping away his sweat, he looks around to make sure no one is there. Stopping in front of a rock, he believes no one will be able to see him. In a memory, a mage asks him how magic is used. He explains that swordsmen refine energy to enhance their bodies or their blades. Paying close attention, the mage listens to his explanation with curiosity. Sitting beside a garden, she then prepares to give an example. She then picks up a watering can that was on the ground next to her. She says that for them, using magic is like watering plants with a watering can. Not understanding, he asks what she meant by that. She explains that mana circulates through circuits and is poured into a magical formula. With a spell activated, the flowers around her begin to bloom. Back in the present, he sits on a rock to meditate in peace. Remembering the mage, he recalls that mana fills all the air around him. Sitting on the rock, he looks at the sky, trying to concentrate on nature. Closing his eyes, he believes he can draw in the mana with his heightened senses. After all, as a swordsman, he trained all 5 of his senses to their limit. So he closes his eyes, preparing to feel the flow of mana. Able to feel the flow of nature, he senses the birds, the water, and the fish. Opening one eye, he seems to have finally perceived something. Just then, the mana becomes visible, flowing throughout the forest around him. Wide-eyed, he's shocked to finally see the magical energy. Celebrating, he says that he did it and now he needs to absorb it all. But he realizes he has no idea how to do that. Hearing a noise, he quickly turns in the direction of the sound. Diving to the ground, he sees something hit the rock right beside him. Sensing the mana, he feels that something is very strange about this place. Getting up, he decides to walk toward the mysterious energy he felt. Moving through the forest, he gets closer and closer to the source of the power. He then realizes he can't sense the presence of any living being, but suddenly, he throws himself to the ground to dodge an attack. As dust kicks up, he's startled by the force of the unexpected attack. Looking ahead, he finds himself facing a huge stone golem. He then wonders why something like that would be in such an isolated place. Just then, he notices someone else falling from the sky right in front of him. A woman then lands on the golem's head, staring him down. Waving, she asks what he's doing in her private workshop. With a threatening look, she asks if he's after her research. She then warns him to think carefully before he opens his mouth. Standing before him, the mysterious woman watches him with great suspicion. Remembering the rumors, he recalls a heroine from the frozen north. Able to command a golem, she alone was worth an army of soldiers. Known as the Creation Mage, her name was the fearsome Isabel. Now in chains, he never imagined he'd meet her in a situation like this. Sitting on her throne, she demands to know which faction he belongs to immediately. Then she points her staff, preparing to use magic against him. A large magic circle forms on the ground, trapping him completely in place. Desperate, he yells for her to wait, trying to stop the attack. He says he didn't resist capture because he's not her enemy. She seems to consider his words before making her decision. Standing up, she prepares a spell and bids farewell to the nameless mage. Screaming, he warns her that he's not even a real mage. Surprised by the revelation, she stops her attack and stares at the chained boy. With a smirk, she says that's a pretty pathetic excuse to use. Placing a hand on his head, she begins to use an unknown magic. Her eye glowing, she's surprised by what she just discovered. She then realizes there's no mana flowing through his circuits. Now in her room, she says she finally understands his situation. Sipping a cup of tea, she informs him that she doesn't plan to apologize. She then complains that she's already a target for everyone around her. Surprised, he asks if she's really a professor at the Magic Academy. He thinks this is his chance to learn from her at the academy. Taking another sip, she glares at him with a look of pure contempt. Standing up, he prepares to make a very important request. Filled with hope, he asks her to teach him how to manifest mana. Coldly, she refuses, saying she has no interest in talentless losers. She then tells him to finish his drink and just leave. Remembering his death, he refuses to accept that fate once again. He refuses to back down no matter what. Ignoring her order, he simply asks if he can have another cup of tea. He then thinks he needs to find a way to convince her to help him.
Using his special vision, he's able to analyze the mana around him. He then notices a flaw in the energy flow inside her golem. Pointing at the golem, he warns that the creature is acting strangely. Suddenly, the golem starts to shake and loses control of the teapot. The golem then hits her on the head, spilling all the hot liquid. Worried, he stands up and shouts her name, rushing to help. He explains that the circuits in the golem's right shoulder seem to be clogged.
The energy in the golem's shoulder begins to fail, confirming what he said. Impressed, she wonders how he knew her golem was malfunctioning. Grabbing his arm tightly, she demands to know how he found out. She then asks how he knew the golem's shoulder was broken. He replies that the golem's mana flow seemed completely abnormal to him. She then remembers being told that mana is invisible. Looking at her, he simply confirms that he can see the flow of mana. She says she now understands how he broke her barrier so easily. She then wonders if it was because of his experience as a swordsman. Remembering her enemy, she understands he also had the same kind of talent. She then realizes this was the talent her enemy envied so much. Calling his name, she then faces him with a new expression. With a smile, she finally agrees to teach him how to use mana. Surprised, he says she had just told him she wouldn't help. Extending her hand, she says that he has now piqued her interest. Happy with her answer, he accepts the proposal with a big smile. Shaking hands, they finally seal the deal for his training. Explaining the lesson, she says that mana is already absorbed naturally by the body. He then asks what he needs to do to make the mana flow through the circuits. She shows that mana only flows when a magic formula is used. Not understanding the drawing, he asks what that strange formula is. Showing him a scroll, she says it's a spell given to academy freshmen. Excited, he asks what kind of magic it is, but she says it's a surprise. She instructs him to feel the power circulating and pour it into the magic formula. With a big smile, he says he'll try with all his might. She then thinks that this task usually takes at least a month to complete, but she considers that if his talent is real, things could be different. Maybe he could do it all in just half a month of training. Remembering her words, he prepares to feel the power inside him. He understands it's like refining his energy, needing only to focus inward. Closing his eyes, he begins to concentrate so he can feel the energy. Deep inside, he strives to find the mana within himself. With a slight smile, he finally finds what he was looking for. Placing his hand on the scroll, a purple magic circle begins to form. Opening his eyes, he realizes she was right all along. Looking at the scroll, he sees that the mana was right there. Mastering mana is like learning to walk with a new pair of legs. No one is born knowing how to walk. You have to fall and get back up to find your footing. Completely shocked, She stands there, watching what just happened. Even the greatest mages in the world take time to learn how to use mana. Looking up at the sky, he observes the various energy particles he just created. Approaching slowly, she still can't seem to believe what she's seeing. She thinks it's unbelievable that he mastered it on his first try. Remembering their conversation, she recalls the answer he gave about the golem. Then she wonders if it's just because he can see mana, but whatever the reason, she's certain about one thing with that boy. One thing was for sure, he possessed a truly impressive talent for magic. Observing the result, he finally understands that this was true magic. With a big smile, she calls out to him, saying what he did was incredible. Slapping him on the back, she can hardly believe he did it on the first try. He then says that it's not good enough, leaving her confused. Looking at the magic, he says it doesn't look very beautiful. Remembering the past, he recalls the beauty of the magic he saw as a child. That smile on his face was proof of his pure admiration for magic. He then says that magic is something special and beautiful, but this one seemed different. Pointing to the scroll, he says the spell doesn't seem right somehow. He says that just like the golem, the mana flow of that spell is strange. Turning to her, he asks what she thinks, surprising the young woman. He then finally understands what he truly wants for his future. With a clenched fist, he says he doesn't want to just become a simple mage. With a shout, he declares that he wants to cast magic that is perfect and beautiful. She then replies that if he found something strange, he should have rewritten it. Surprised by her answer, he approaches her with newfound excitement. He then asks how he can draw the magical formulas for spells. Elsewhere, his father walks alone down a long castle corridor. He seems thoughtful, recalling some event from his past. Fallen on the ground, the rivals wonder how he managed to get so strong. Approaching, his father asks what happened there. Trying to cover it up, they say it was nothing serious, just training. With a serious look, he demands to know exactly what happened there. Afraid, they prepare to tell the master the whole truth. A man approaches and begins to explain the whole situation to him. After hearing the story, he remains silent, just watching the man. He then says he finds it hard to believe that Oscar defeated all of them. He then orders them to take care of their injuries, so it won't affect tomorrow's training. Bowing, the man agrees and says he understood all of his orders. Observing the horizon, the father believes the right time has finally come. With a smile, he says it's time to bestow the sword's energy. Elsewhere, a library is filled with books and research items. He says he didn't know magical formulas were so profound. She then offers to lend him some books so he can learn even more. With a smile, she confirms, saying all her knowledge is in there. Looking for him, she realizes the boy suddenly vanished from in front of her. He then reappears with a pile of books, saying he'll take them all. She asks if he's going to take everything, and he reminds her that she authorized it. Calling out to him, she prepares to give him a very important warning. She says she needs to warn him about something, even if it spoils his excitement. Now that he has housed mana in his body, he has officially become a mage. She then warns him that he needs to be very careful when handling the sword. As she speaks, an image of his father appears in a quick flashback. She finishes the warning by saying that if he's not careful, he'll end up dead. Back in Eisen Village, he watches everything from a distance, mounted on his horse. Having returned, he wears a serious and tired look on his face. Inside a room, his sick father says it's been a long time. Stopping in front of the bed, he hears his father finally recognize him. He then kneels beside his father, who extends his hand. In a memory, his father touches him, saying he truly had talent. He also says that forcing him to give up magic was not a mistake. That memory left him with a great pain in his own chest. His father forced him to follow the path of the sword against his will. Holding the registration letter, he now has a new chance to choose. In front of the gates, he prepares to finally enter the Magic Academy. Thinking of his father, he vows that this time he will enroll in magic. Elsewhere, a mysterious man stands watching the fire burn. Seeing the boy arrive, he asks if he has some business to discuss. With a determined look, he announces that he's come to get his registration signed. Standing face to face, they stare at each other in tense silence. He says that can wait, but the boy refuses to postpone it. With an angry look, he seems to dislike the young man's attitude. The boy then says he can't wait, as he needs his father's signature. Asking for a reason, he questions why he decided to follow the path of magic. He then reminds him of the conversation they had when he wanted to use magic. Ignoring the question, he just holds the pen, preparing to sign. Pointing at him, his father says that it was nothing but foolishness. He then questions him if it really was just simple foolishness. Lowering his head, he agrees, saying that to him, it really was just that. When the man touches him, a great magical energy is released. Shocked by the power, he yells, asking what kind of joke this was. He then asks if the boy has already managed to fully master mana. With a smile, he says he didn't think he'd be able to persuade his father. Angrily, his father asks what he is trying to persuade him about. He says that defeating swordsmen without a sword shows the extent of his talent. The boy replies that he is aware of his own full potential. Angrily, his father shouts that he isn't aware of anything. He says that success is guaranteed for him if he becomes a swordsman. The boy then says his assessment is correct, but that he disagrees. He says that success doesn't necessarily bring people happiness. Facing each other, they prepare for a clash of ideals. Putting a hand to his face, he says he understands and that it makes sense. The boy just watches him, waiting for his reaction to those words. With a dark look, he says he can still fix this situation. He then asks if the boy wants to die, making him afraid. If the boy insists on the wrong path, he will make him come to his senses. Drawing his sword, he says he'll make him see reason. He warns that even if he doesn't accept it now, one day he will thank him. With a determined look, he replies, "That day will never come, father." That day truly never came for him in his past life. Pointing the sword, his father tells him to grab his own weapon. He says he'll give him at least that much time to prepare. Closing his eyes, he concentrates for the coming fight. Opening his eyes, he faces him with a look of pure determination. Holding the letter, he reminds him that he is now a mage, not a swordsman. The letter from the Magic Academy was proof of his new choice. He then throws the letter into the pyre, burning the paper completely. Surprised and angry, his father doesn't understand what he's doing. With a challenge, he says, "Let's see if you can take this from me." Walking, he tells the boy to try his luck and see what happens. He warns him not to get cocky just because he withstood his energy, but with a swift strike, his father stops the blade near his neck. He thinks he can read the attacks as if he were holding the sword himself. Since childhood, he has always carefully watched his father's every move. The reflection in his eyes showed that he had learned everything he could from him. Unleashing a flurry of blows, his father creates an attack that covers the entire area, but the boy dodges every strike with great ease. He then reveals that the person he looked up to the most was his father. Stepping back, his father says he truly lives up to his words. He also praises him for dodging so well, even without using his energy. He then says his talent with the sword is truly genuine. Offering his energy, he tells the boy to accept his power. The boy then remembers it was his father who said he would make him surrender. With a smile, he asks if his father wants him to yield. Angrily, his father calls him a fool, not believing his attitude. He then says that, like his talent, there are things he refuses to yield. Holding a quill, he shows that he won't give in to his father. His father asks if he intends to use that as a real sword. He then reveals that it's a magic staff for beginners like him. Remembering Isabel, he says that knowledge is necessary for magic, and just like him, his father also has no knowledge of magic. Holding the quill, he readies himself, as his father doesn't know what's coming. His father could never predict what his next move in combat would be. Lunging forward with a strike, he attacks the boy with all his might. Using his special vision, he can predict all of his father's attacks. He then summons several copies to protect himself from his father's blow. Dodging the attack, he manages to escape unharmed, with a slight smile. Appearing behind him, he takes him by surprise, preparing to counterattack. He then stops his father's blade, showing his vast superiority. Holding the quill, he prepares to use the magic he has always dreamed of. He then uses mana to draw a magical formula from his knowledge. Remembering his childhood, he recalls the first magic he ever saw, the magic he had dreamed of countless times over all those years. With a spark spell, he prepares to fulfill his wish. In a memory, his sick mother sat in a rocking chair. Shocked by the spell, his father is speechless, just watching the sparks. The spark spell hits his father, creating a small burst of light. He then wonders what kind of magic that was. Charging at him, the boy prepares for his final attack. Angrily, he asks if that magic was just a simple distraction. Tossing his father into the air, he shows it was no distraction. Landing on the ground, he stops right beside his father's sword. The reflection on the blade shows the boy with the quill pointed at his father. He then says he knew his father would attack based on his presence. He asks if the goal was to take his sword with the distraction. The boy says that hiding his objective was something he learned from him. With a hand on his face, he seems frustrated with the whole situation. He then says he can guarantee his talent, but there are no guarantees in magic. Standing face to face, they stare at each other in silence. With a smile, he says he merely demonstrated the path he wishes to follow. He then asks if his father became a swordsman because his talent was guaranteed. Remembering the past, his father seems to recall an old conversation. A man wonders if his son should follow the path of the sword. Sitting next to his wife, he says their son has a talent for the sword. She then reminds him that he only started fighting because he thought it was cool. With a smile, she says, "They don't need to choose. as he will decide for himself. With a faint smile, he says he thought his son would become a sword saint. Happy with the answer, the boy watches him with a hopeful gaze. But his father turns and starts to walk away, leaving the boy confused. Signing the application, his father finally accepts the path he has chosen. Surprised, the boy just stares at him, not understanding his sudden change of heart. With a smile, he says he can't sign with that magic quill. Changing scenes, the Magic Academy prepares to welcome the new students. Reading a file, a man says the new students are exceptional. A woman says the princess and other nobles are enrolling in the academy. With a smile, a young man says they have already mastered hereditary magics. Another mysterious man holds a file, not revealing his identity to the others. An instructor asks if there's anything wrong with the new students. The mysterious man says they are worthy of the saint class lineage. Elsewhere, the boy studies magic, using the quill as a pen. In front of the dormitory, his father waited for him with a faint smile. He turned to face him, a proud look in his eyes. After 6 months, the day to go to the academy had finally arrived. Walking with a smile, he says that time flew by in the blink of an eye. His father reminds him that many others have also been refining their magic during this time. He then advises him to stay strong, as this was the path he chose. With a confident look, he promises his father he'll be fine. With a smile, he says there's no one scarier than his father. His father then smiles, understanding that the boy is ready for his future. Saying his goodbyes, his father says he's leaving and walks away. Holding the letter, he thinks that he can finally go to the academy. Walking past other students, he finally reaches his long-awaited destination. He's finally going to the Magic Academy he's always dreamed of. Opening the gates, he prepares to enter a new world of magic. Behind the gates, a huge, beautiful castle appears before him. Several mages are casting spells to celebrate the arrival of the new students. Magical gnomes play their instruments, creating a grand welcoming party. Other students fly by on their brooms at high speed. With a smile, he says the atmosphere is very different from the Sword Academy. With their instruments, the gnomes continue to play their music for the new students. Crouching down, he wonders what the difference is between gnomes and golems. Remembering his registration, he stands up so he won't be late for the procedure. But suddenly, he finds Isabel standing right in front of him. Running up to her, he says he hopes she hasn't been slacking off these past few months. With a smile, she tells him to surprise her again with his talent. Pointing down the street, he asks where all the other academy students are. She explains that the selection exam for the first class is happening right there. The students are divided into 2 classes, based on whether they have mana or not. Above those 2, there's a special class for the most talented of all. The exam is a way to separate the most talented students from the others. She advises him to avoid the exam, but he asks why. She explains that the students who pass the exam are all powerful monsters. They are the elite, who grew up surrounded by magic since childhood. With a smile, he says that means he can learn advanced magic. With her hand on her head, she says it's useless to try and convince him. She then invites him to see the exam with his own eyes. In an arena, 2 students face off in an exhibition match. One of the students uses water magic to defend against the attack. The wave of water surges forward, showing the strength of the student's magic. With a smile, the student celebrates landing a successful attack. Watching the fight, he realizes the exam involves hitting a target with magic, but suddenly, he gets the feeling he's being watched. Turning around, he sees a man with white hair calling him over. The man calls him a commoner, saying he has no right to be there. With a look of anger, he tells the boy to leave immediately. He replies that he heard any new student could be accepted into the academy. With disdain, the man says he certainly has a silver tongue. He finally understands what Isabel meant about the students being monsters. He then realizes that no one who isn't a noble is welcome in that class. Shoving the boy, he says he's next and tells him to watch. A woman with a staff prepares to start the next round. Watching from afar, he prepares to display all of his magical power. He says the first class is for those who have dedicated everything to magic. Casting an ice spell, he chants, "Freeze all of existence." Enormous pillars of ice erupt, showcasing his incredible magical power. The people in the audience are shocked by the strength of the ice magic. The boy is also stunned by what he just witnessed. Impressed, they comment that this is to be expected from House Golosis. Others wonder if he used all his power in that single strike. He then says that now he understands this place isn't for him. He admits that the noble's magic is impressive and that he dedicated everything to it, but with a slight smile, he says it's all a huge waste. Angrily, the noble asks what he just said about his magic. Ignoring the taunt, he just turns and gets ready to leave. He then thinks that he understands the weight of effort and time very well. With a smile, he says he's gained some confidence and thanks the noble. The people in the crowd laugh, saying he's using a pen for a wand. They then say there's no way he can hit anything with that thing. The noble says his magic should have been perfect. Without a single flaw. Standing in front of the ice, the boy prepares to take his turn. He says his house specializes in ice, so there shouldn't be any flaws, but he wonders why he's taking that commoner boy seriously. The instructor prepares to start the next challenger's attempt. She says this year's batch is great, just as the rumors suggested. She's impressed with Zazan, who's already tipped to be the representative. But even so, she feels like something different is about to happen. She then wonders what the boy has been doing all this time. In the crowd, a man yells, telling him to give up if he can't hit it. The instructor notices he's waiting for something, and he isn't anxious. Using his special vision, he analyzes the ice magic in front of him. He can see all the flaws in the structure of the huge ice pillars. Holding the quill, he prepares to show his true magical ability. The instructor is shocked to see what he's about to do. Using a magic formula, he prepares to cast a fire spell. He then casts the spell, hitting all the targets with precision. The targets fall to the ground, showing they were all hit by the spell. The instructor is shocked, wondering what just happened. People comment that he used basic magic, but still hit the targets. They also say that if he's at the academy, he should use better spells. With a slight smile, he turns away, ignoring the crowd's comments. The noble wondered what kind of magic he would use in the exam. Lying on the ground, he says it was all a big waste of time. The boy then asks the instructor if he failed the exam. With a shout, she says he hit 5 targets and passed without any problems. Confused, he doesn't understand why she's so surprised by the result. He then asks why she's so shocked by his performance. She asks why he didn't aim one by one if he was able to. Angrily, she tells him not to say it was all just pure luck. With a hand on his chin, he thinks the noble's magic was incredible. He remembers the ice spell, which was truly impressive to see. He then explains that it's a waste to use so much mana on one spell. Confused, she wonders what he means by a waste of mana. He says he assumed the exam was practical and thought of it as a battlefield. Hearing his explanation, she falls silent, just watching the boy. She then apologizes for interrupting him and says she understands now. Walking through the city, he remembers what just happened in the exam. The instructor thinks about the vision, courage, and mana control he demonstrated. She thinks that more than anyone, he understands the true essence of magic. He proved to be a mage with far greater potential than anyone else there. Walking alone, he reflects on his first day at the Magic Academy. He can't believe he met such an incredible mage right off the bat. Walking alone, he notices someone is watching him closely. He stops walking and turns to see who the mysterious person is. With a serious look, he asks who's there, telling them to reveal themselves. A voice then praises his sharp eyes for noticing them so quickly. With a staff in hand, the person says it's a pleasure to meet him. Revealing himself, the man says his name is Balsamus, the academy's headmaster. Bowing, he apologizes for his rudeness, but the headmaster calms him down. Surprised by his identity, the boy is speechless for a moment, but suddenly he notices something strange, and his eyes go wide. He recognizes the necklace the headmaster is wearing as the one from the mysterious mage. Reaching out, he asks if there's something wrong with him. Hesitating for a moment, he gets ready to greet the academy's headmaster, but as he touches him, he gets a vision of the headmaster with a pained expression. Shocked by the vision, he quickly backs away. Startled by what he saw, a powerful gust of wind throws him back, showcasing the headmaster's magical strength. He's then thrown onto the roof of a house. Landing safely, the headmaster praises him for dodging, questioning his sharp perception. Floating in the air, he wonders if the boy's intuition is really that strong. With the quill in his hand, he asks if the headmaster came here to kill him. The headmaster asks if he really thinks he can win with that. With a swing of his staff, he casts a powerful wind spell. A prison of wind forms, surrounding the boy on all sides. He then realizes it's a wind barrier, and there's no way out. Realizing there's no escape, he prepares to use a fire spell. Using a magic formula, he launches a fireball at the headmaster. The spell surges forward, about to hit the headmaster dead on in the air. Hovering in the air, the headmaster watches the fire attack approach him, but with his staff, he deflects the spell with incredible ease. The boy braces for a counterattack, but the headmaster just watches him. He then realizes the headmaster aimed it so he could defend himself. With a slight smile, the headmaster seems pleased with the test results. Confused, he looks around, not understanding what's happening. Kneeling on the ground, he prepares for the headmaster's next move. The headmaster asks if he's already out of spells, and says he was just testing him. With a smile, the headmaster lands, and the boy asks what his goal was. He wanted him to experience the reality of being targeted for his talent. With a serious look, He says he underestimated the boy's true potential. He then asks if he'll be a target for standing out so much at the academy. The headmaster confirms it, saying that extremists don't tolerate talented commoners. He remembers the attack he suffered when he was targeted by mysterious mages. They said they couldn't forgive his existence with so much talent. Approaching him, he asks the headmaster to tell him who the extremists are. With a shout, he demands to know who the people who attacked him are. The headmaster just stares at him in silence, not answering his question. He then says that knowing their identities would put him in greater danger. He advises him to focus on learning to protect himself at the academy. With a determined look, he thinks about the power he needs to protect himself. He remembers that if the headmaster were an enemy, he'd already be dead. Closing his eyes, he seems frustrated with his own weakness right now. Turning to the headmaster, he gets ready to ask another question. He then asks what the pendant he's wearing around his neck is. The headmaster stares at him, looking a bit surprised by his question. He then asks if there's something wrong with the proof of a magic saint. Shocked, he understands that this is a title of the highest rank. That title was the mage's equivalent of the sword saint. The headmaster then says he's going to give him something and tosses a coin. Holding the coin, he wonders if it's some kind of badge. The headmaster warns him not to lose it, as it will be useful soon. Watching the headmaster leave, he's impressed by the power he displayed. He thinks that there isn't the slightest disturbance in the headmaster's mana. Holding the badge, he says he can't just stand there being impressed. He thought that just learning magic would be enough in his new life. But remembering his death, he knows he needs far more power. With a clenched fist, he understands he needs to become much stronger. He says he needs to surpass the man he was as the Sword Saint. In a room, 2 students comment that he was the first to arrive. They also say he hit every target during the exam. The noble says that's ridiculous and that he'll be eliminated soon. A man then enters the room, approaching the students who were there. Stepping forward, he prepares to make an important announcement. Seated, the noble just watches him with a look of pure contempt. Surprised, the noble stares at him with a shocked expression on his face. Entering the room, he walks toward his seat among the other students. In disbelief, the noble wonders how that guy managed to get here. He then questions what could have happened to the commoner boy. Talking with the mage, he says he needs to focus on gaining power to protect himself. Sitting with his eyes closed, he begins to concentrate on his power training. By repeating the process, he understands that discharging power increases his mana pool. Opening his eyes, he now stares at the horizon with a much more determined look. Standing in his room, he continues to look outside through the large window. Looking at his hand, he says he wants to gain more combat experience now. Suddenly, while sitting on the floor, he turns around in surprise as he notices something. Walking towards the door, he remarks that this is the first time this has happened. Adjusting his gloves, he states that this is the first time he's ever wanted to become stronger. Arriving at the location, he faces a group of 3 guys looking down on him. Seeing him there, the white-haired guy scoffs, saying, "That guy!" The guy then wonders what could have happened to our protagonist. Around them, other students also seem quite surprised by his sudden appearance. Noticing his rival there, his gaze finds someone else among the students. His eyes focus on a girl with glasses, and he wonders who she is. As she sat reading, a bookmark fell to the floor beside her. Bending down, he quickly picks up the bookmark before anyone can step on it. Walking up to the girl, he asks if that bookmark belongs to her. Holding out his hand, he returns the object she had dropped. With a smile on her face, she thanks him profusely for returning it. Observing her reaction, he comments that she seems to really like flowers. Confused by his words, the girl just stares at him, not understanding the comment. Introducing himself as Oscar, he asks to sit next to her, whose name is Lily. Just then, a voice emerges, and he looks up, paying attention. The other students look around, wondering whose voice that was. Coming from a nearby table, the voice seemed to be coming from inside a book. Suddenly, the book's pages begin to fly all over the room. Startled, all the students, including his rival, watch the pages fly around. Then a woman appears and introduces herself as Ruth, the person in charge of the class. Recognizing the woman, he remarks that she's the teacher from the first class exam. The teacher announces that next week they will participate in combat classes. Hearing about the field training, he becomes visibly much more excited. With his fist on the table, he can hardly believe he'll be gaining combat experience so soon. To balance the groups, she says they will form teams of 5. Confused, the students ask if combat strength is their magical power. Wagging her finger, she explains that the measurement will be their total body mana. Next to the girl, he continues to pay close attention to all the instructions. With a smile, the teacher prepares to begin the measurement procedure. She then informs them that she has finished measuring every student's capacity. Suddenly, the students notice spheres of light appearing above their heads. The girl beside him is also surprised by the sphere that appeared above her. With her back turned, the teacher tells them to look at the light intensity of each sphere. A large large sphere appears above his rival, impressing a classmate standing nearby. Another student with a serious expression also has a sphere of equal intensity. Sitting in a relaxed manner, another boy smiles for also having a powerful sphere. Observing the students, the teacher says there are several talented mages in the class. Above his head, a small sphere of mana appears, leaving him very confused. Mocking him, other students say that no one will want to team up with him. Ignoring the comments, he thinks that now is not the time to worry about that. Just then, a hand touches his shoulder, making him turn around suddenly. It was the girl from before, who invites him to join her group. He asks if she's sure, and she says that anyone who loves flowers is a good person. But she warns him that first, she'll need to ask someone named Levin. Not understanding at all, he wonders who this Levin person could be. Sitting down, the red-haired guy asks if she wants to put that guy in their group. Facing the guy, he says confidently that he would very much like to join the group. The two then stare at each other, while the redhead seems to be analyzing the whole situation. Resting his hand on the table, he says it is a noble's duty to protect the weak. He then agrees, saying he'll let him join as a baggage carrier. After the conversation, the students begin to gather to form their groups. One of the students turns and glares at the two of them with a look of contempt. Walking beside him, the girl notices the other student stares. She tells him not to be bothered, saying the difference between them is natural. As they walk, he says it's okay and thanks her for letting him join the group. Answering one of her questions, he says he's been studying magic for about half a year. Stopping, the two of them continue talking about his training. With a surprised expression, she asks if he's really only been studying for half a year. He then turns to her, a bit confused by her reaction. Walking down the hallway, the teacher leaves the students after giving them instructions. Just then, the white-haired boy calls out to her, saying Professor Ruth's name. Turning to the student, she asks if something is wrong. He then questions why that commoner is in the academy's first class. Continuing his complaint, he says the boy has no mana or power whatsoever. With a clenched fist, he states that an amateur won't be able to keep up with them. With a smile, the teacher asks if he's referring to young Oscar. Staring intently at the boy, she begins to share an important fact about him. She reveals that it's only been 6 months since he awakened his mana, shocking his rival. Stating he has great potential, she says he might soon surpass him. Turning her back, she continues to explain her point of view on the matter. She concludes by saying that the field training is meant to weed out the weakest. The scene changes, and the classroom now appears completely empty. A pyramid chart shows that nobles are born with a high power level. Hearing the explanation, he simply says he understands the situation. He then says it's impressive for someone to reach that mana level at his age. Very excited, the girl says that he's actually the incredible one in this story. Grabbing him, she shouts that it's unheard of for someone to reach that level in just 6 months. Remembering his master, he says his training must have been very good. Taking the opportunity, he asks what her exact relationship with Levin is. With a smile, she explains that Levin's family is a prestigious noble house. His family is so important that the others follow him in exchange for protection. She continues, saying that Levin is skilled and will protect the group when needed. Beside her, he seems a little worried about the idea of being protected. Changing scenes to the forest, the students gather for the start of their field training. In front of everyone, the teacher says she will explain the rules of the activity. She informs them their task is to survive 1 night in a forest filled with monsters. Hearing the rules, he reflects that this is another practical task right after the exam. Showing a scroll, she says it contains a barrier and a flare. One of the students scoffs that it'll be easy, they just have to use the paper. She warns, however, that any group using the paper will be demoted from the first class. Hearing the new rule, all the students are completely shocked and terrified. Noticing the tension, he realizes how important it is for everyone to stay in the first class. The red-haired boy then says that as long as he's around, quitting is out of the question. With a confident smile, he promises to protect everyone during the test. The students then begin to organize, each joining their group. A very large camping backpack is thrown on the ground near the group. Pointing at the luggage, the redhead orders him to hurry up and carry the equipment. Beside him, the girl worries, but he says he'll be fine. Seeing him bend down, the redhead says he likes people who know their place. Carrying the backpack, he walks with the group as they enter the forest for the test. Suddenly, the group's leader trips and falls to the ground, startling his teammates. On the ground, he seems to be hurt, while the others just watch, unsure of what to do. Extending a hand to him, the protagonist asks if he can stand up. The boy just glares at the outstretched hand with an expression of pure rage. Rejecting the help, the redhead furiously yells at him to shut up and get away. Walking ahead, he turns to the girl and asks if she's okay. Watching the boy, he wonders how the other can remain so calm. As he keeps walking, he thinks that they haven't encountered any monsters along the way yet. Suddenly, his gaze focuses on something strange, noticing an anomaly in in the forest. As they walk, the surrounding environment starts to look increasingly different. Shouting desperately, he warns everyone to stop and not take another step. Annoyed by the command, the redhead stomps his foot and asks who he thinks he is. With a serious expression, he senses something similar to his master's barrier. Just then, the group realizes they are trapped inside a huge magic circle. When a foot steps on the circle, the magic barrier begins to crack completely. Holding her staff, the girl looks up, surprised by what's happening. Shocked, the redhead asks what the hell is going on. Through a crack, his serious gaze carefully observes the dangerous situation. On the other side of the broken barrier, a hand holds a dagger, ready to strike. Turning to the group, he tells everyone to prepare their staves for the imminent battle. With the barrier breaking, he tells everyone to get their staves ready for the fight. Looking up, the group notices the sky now looks completely different. Startled by the change, she asks if this is still the forest they were walking in. Just then, they find themselves facing enormous trees, in a place very different from before. On one of the trees, a marking with the number 5 reveals the location's identity. She then asks if it's possible they're in the 5th cemetery. One of the students shouts that this is a training ground for veterans. He then wonders if the magic circle was a trap set by someone. Recalling the situation, an image of 5 hooded figures comes to his mind. Facing the emergency, the protagonist suggests they use the magic paper to call for help. Holding the scroll in his hands, the redhead listens to his classmate's suggestion. Without hesitation, he starts ripping the paper with both hands in front of them. As he rips the paper, the redhead glares at the protagonist with a mocking look. He then smirks and says it was just a forgotten teleportation circle. Turning to the protagonist, he claims this is actually a great opportunity. He says that if he aces this training, the academy will give him an even better evaluation. As he walks ahead, the others comment that he's just what you'd expect from the Aldrit heir. The girl then asks Oscar to stay very close to her during the test. Walking with the group, he seems a bit tired of the whole situation. Suddenly, he stops and looks ahead with an expression of complete surprise. In the darkness, several pairs of eyes watch the approaching group. A 3-eyed wolf with sharp teeth stares at the students, growling at them. With a smile on his face, the redhead says they've finally shown up to fight. Holding his weapon, he prepares for the battle that's about to begin. He thinks this is a unique chance to gain real combat experience. The redhead stops him, asking what he thinks he's doing getting so close. He then says he'll show them how a true noble really fights. Not understanding the comment, he wonders about the way a noble fights. One of the wolf's paws hits the ground, revealing its sharp claws. Preparing for the attack, the redhead faces a wolf charging in his direction. Wielding his wooden weapon, he readies himself for battle against the creatures. With a smile on his face, he raises the weapon high to attack the wolves. Slamming the weapon on the ground, he creates a barrier to protect the whole group. From the ground, a rock barrier begins to rise in front of the students. The barrier hits the wolves, throwing the creatures away from the group of students. Shouting to his classmates, he tells everyone to attack the monsters now. At that, one of the guys launches a blast of wind toward the creatures. Right after, the other classmate also fires a jet of water at the targets. Passing through the barrier, the two attacks score a direct hit on one of the forest wolves. They divide the tasks, protecting themselves while attacking the monsters at the same time. Watching the fight, he finally understands that this is how a mage fights. Seeing the monsters, the redhead realizes there are too many of them for the group to handle. Suddenly, an attack breaks through the barrier and hits one of the students head-on. Thrown a great distance, the young man can't defend himself from the powerful surprise attack. Just then, a wolf appears behind the girl, who freezes completely. Annoyed, the redhead turns back to the battle, noticing the dangerous situation. Before the girl, a giant wolf appears, preparing for the imminent attack. Leaping over the rocks, the wolf lunges ferociously at the student. Seeing the danger, he prepares a fire spell to save his classmate. Casting the spell, he hits the wolf and pulls the girl away from the attack. Hit head-on, the wolf falls to the ground, completely defeated by the blow. Pulling the girl behind him, he protects her from danger, stepping in front. She thanks him for saving her life, and he says the fight is over. With the wolves defeated on the ground, the group finally gets a moment of peace. As night falls, they all rest around a campfire in the forest. The redhead says he's lucky to see a noble fight up close. He replies that it was a magnificent combination of defensive magic. Being praised, the redhead seems a little embarrassed by the comment. He then reflects that he desires an individual strength that surpasses their power. Thoughtfully, he wonders if he should just keep training as he always has. As he sits in the forest, the girl calls out to him and approaches. With a smile, she offers him 2 mugs so they can talk. She says she's the one who ended up needing protection, and he thanks her for her help. He then asks about the difference in strength of the defensive magic she used. Remembering the wolf's attack, he continues his questioning about the magic. The redhead explains that magic is stronger the closer it is to the caster. Mocking him, he says that commoners are all like that and don't understand magic. The girl then explains that magic returns to nature the farther away it gets. Hearing the explanation, he finally understands the logic behind using magic. He reflects that if the formula and the mana are the same, there must be a way. Drinking from the mug, he wonders if there isn't a way to increase its effectiveness. Laughing, the girl says it seems she made the drink a bit too thick. He just smiles back, while continuing to think about magical power. At that moment, his gaze focuses on something, as if he's had a new idea. Observing the drink, he says he finally understands what he needs to do. Seeing him lost in thought, the girl calls his name, a little worried about him. Looking at the mug, he thinks about increasing the power that fills the container. He then wonders if this idea isn't similar to the Ki sword. Meanwhile, a man watches the group through a surveillance spell. Holding a whip, he comments on the heir of the renowned Aldrich family. Stepping on a magic circle, he seems to be preparing for some action. With a serious look, he says he'd prefer that person to stay quiet for now. Behind him, a huge, shadowy creature emerges, awaiting his orders. At a campsite, a teacher observes a group of students who have given up on the test. Scared, the defeated students huddle together, awaiting the outcome. She reflects that the dropout rate was low, as the class is exceptional. Just then, another woman arrives and says it's time to switch. The new instructor introduces herself as the teacher named Isabel. Seeing the newcomer, the students wonder if she is Isabel of Destiny. Watching a spell, she comments on how the students are doing in the test. She says the rivals group is doing very well, as expected from the first class. In another part of the forest, a student reads while sitting on top of a defeated creature. Asking about Oscar, the other teacher says his group's signal has disappeared. Looking at the location, she finds it strange, as they were there just a moment ago. Back in the forest, his group continues to rest around the fire. The other team members also take advantage of the free time to relax. One of the guys gets up and starts practicing with his wand near the woods. Holding his mug, the protagonist remains thoughtful, watching the campfire. Remembering the Ki sword, he thinks about how swordsmen use that technique. He then wonders if it would be possible to do the same thing using his mana. Suddenly, he hears a noise and looks startled toward the forest. Two of his classmates run out of the woods, screaming for everyone to run. The redhead then asks if more weaklings are showing up for the fight. Suddenly, a huge pillar of fire erupts in front of the whole group. Noticing the explosion, the redhead wonders what just happened. As the flames dissipate, a figure begins to emerge from the darkness. With sharp claws, the paw of an enormous creature steps onto the forest floor. Emerging from the shadows, a giant dragon appears, facing the entire group of students. Shocked by its appearance, the students wonder if that is really a dragon. With its mouth open, the creature lets out a roar that startles everyone there. The redhead says it's impossible for a dragon to be in a place like this. With a serious look, he realizes someone is targeting their group. Desperate, the students ask the redhead to use the paper, which he has already torn. Still in shock, the girl says it can't be, not believing the situation. With his weapon in hand, he says there's no choice but to fight. She then questions him, asking if he really wants to fight a dragon. His classmates say that with his defensive magic, they can withstand the attacks. He then realizes that if they resist, the teachers will notice something is wrong. Without hesitation, he raises his wooden weapon high to protect the group. Slamming the weapon into the ground, he summons an earth spirit shield. A huge stone wall rises, but only to protect himself. Screaming, his classmates ask what he's doing, leaving them behind. He then yells that he will survive, even if he's the only one. In disbelief, the guys remember he said he would protect everyone. One of them says there's nowhere to run, as the dragon has its eyes on them. Holding her staff, she gets ready and says they need to fight to live. With a magic circle, she casts an earth spell toward the dragon. After the attack, the students look at the smoke and wonder if they hit it. Emerging from the smoke, the dragon appears to have taken no damage from the blow. One of the students says the attack didn't work because it wasn't advanced magic. She then yells that she'll draw the monster's attention, telling Oscar to run. Not knowing what to do, she turns and faces the protagonist, waiting for an answer. With a serious look, he stares back at her, seemingly with a plan in mind. The dragon then fires 2 energy blasts at the terrified students. Desperate, one of them screams that he doesn't want to die, thinking all is lost. With its mouth open, the dragon begins to prepare a new, powerful attack. He then turns to the girl, who looks at him, confused by his attitude. She realizes the dragon is absorbing mana from the environment as energy. He reflects that despite its power, This is the monster's only ability. Concentrating his power, he prepares to use one of his new abilities. Wielding his dagger, he says he'll test which of them is superior. Facing the dragon, he braces for the creature's powerful strike. Focusing on refining his power, he prepares to use a new ability. Unleashing its attack, the dragon creates a huge energy blast. Behind a barrier, the other students watch the scene in terror. Shielding the girl with his body, he pulls her away from the imminent danger. Launching a powerful blow, he fires a pillar of energy at the monster. Striking the dragon's mouth, the blow interrupts the monster's attack. With immense force, the strike pierces through the dragon's body, causing massive damage. Thrown back, the dragon falls as the others watch the scene unfold. On the ground, the girl stares at the battle's outcome, completely stunned. Standing in the clearing, he seriously observes the result of his attack. Shifting to another location, the scene focuses on the dark, starry night sky. Seeing the defeat, the man scoffs that it's a joke for a freshman to beat his chimera. Completely bewildered, he wonders what kind of power was used in that battle. Looking back, he wonders if anyone managed to sense his presence. With a hateful glare, he vows to ensure the boy is eliminated. He then declares that only those of noble blood can wield such power. Back in the forest, the protagonist observes the outcome of his great battle. With a smile on his face, he celebrates that his new plan worked. Clenching his fist, he can hardly believe his new ability actually succeeded. He then reflects that this is a theory only a former swordsman could have devised. On the ground, the dragon appears to be completely defeated after the blow. The students watch, wondering if they've finally managed to defeat the creature. Behind a barrier, they observe the scene, still a bit frightened. Behind his wall, the red-haired boy says the whole situation is ridiculous. He then realizes a commoner protected him, leaving him completely speechless. Holding her staff, the girl wonders what kind of power that was. Suddenly, his legs give out, and he starts to lose his balance. Shouting his name, she rushes to help him as she sees him falling. Sitting on the ground, he says he's fine, just a little tired. He then reflects that using his power comes at a price, feeling his body ache. Suddenly, the group hears a noise and looks toward the forest. Startled, the girl wonders if something else is coming to attack them. From the middle of the woods, a giant stone figure emerges before the group. Just then, the professor says she found traces of a teleport and came to investigate. With a smile, she asks the students if they are all okay. Still in shock, all the students stare at the professor, speechless. He then shouts the master's name, surprised to see her there in the forest. His body exhausted, he can no longer stay on his feet. Falling to the ground, he collapses completely in front of his classmates. Seeing the defeated dragon, she approaches the creature's body to analyze it. She then says she'll hear everyone's story when they get back. Seeing him passed out, the students gather around to try and wake him. From a distance, the red-haired boy watches the scene, still processing everything that happened. Climbing a rock, the professor gazes at the horizon, pondering the incident. As the sun rises, the professor watches the horizon, bringing the night to a close. Back at the academy, the scene shows the institution's imposing building. In the director's office, he talks with the mage about the recent events. The director says he can't believe something like this happened at the academy. Listening to the report, he faces the director, waiting for his words. With a grim look, the director says the academy has been infiltrated by villains. Hearing the director's words, he is shocked by the revelation. The director praises him, saying he did well to survive the attack. He then says it only happened because he decided to become stronger. Hearing the young man, the director seems a bit thoughtful about the whole situation. Looking out the window, he says he needs to tell him something very cruel. Outside, other students seem to be having fun, unaware of the danger. Calling him by name, the director prepares to deliver his news. He then informs him that he must leave the academy and live without magic. Shocked by the order, he stares at the director, unable to believe what he just heard. Remembering his past, he reflects on his former title as a knight. He then wonders if he'll have to live a life without magic now. With a serious look, he continues to recall his past achievements. A man used to tell him that magic isn't everything and that there are other joys in life. He would then train with his sword, thinking he shouldn't just throw it all away. Remembering his friends, he seems to find a new will to keep fighting. With a serious face, he says no, that he cannot accept this order. Sitting in the office, he faces the director, with an expression of pure determination. He then shouts that after coming this far, he can't just give up. Surprised by the reaction, the director asks what it was that he just said. With a smile, he says he appreciates the director's concern for him. He concludes by saying that if the target is inside the academy, he has an idea. Curious, the director asks the young man about his grand idea. Puffing out his chest, he says he'll act as bait for the enemies. Hearing the bold plan, the director is shocked by the young man's courage. He then asks if the boy isn't afraid of dying in the process. With a smile, he replies that he has no intention of getting caught. The director then starts to laugh, surprised by the student's confidence. Letting out a hearty laugh, he seems to really like the young man's attitude. He then says that in that case, he'll match his resolve. Extending his hand, the director prepares to seal the deal with him. With a smile on his face, he shakes the director's hand, closing the deal. The director says that before he fights, he needs a new staff. Confused, he looks at his weapon, which he used in the last battle. That's when he notices the staff is broken and now unusable. Cutting to the library, the scene shows the place where he will train. There, the director hands him a new staff to use on his mission. The professor says the staff is for beginners, but perfect for him at the moment. He then asks if a staff is really necessary to use his abilities. She explains that it's hard to write with your finger, and the same goes for magic. If mana is the ink, she says, then the staff is the writing tool. He then remembers a time when he admired the other students' staffs. Looking at his broken weapon, he wonders what could have happened. He then wonders if the staff couldn't handle his refined mana. Called by the girl, he turns to find her waiting for him. With a smile, she greets him, happy to see him there with her. He apologizes for interrupting her day off with his errands. Placing a hand on her chest, she tells them to just go and buy the staff. Arriving at the shop, he's impressed by the variety of staffs for sale. The shopkeeper says they pride themselves on the store's large selection of items. Showing a rare piece, a man praises the quality of the staff's gems. Beside him, the girl is startled when she sees the item's price. Shocked by the price, he sees that the staff costs 1 million coins. Fleeing from shopkeepers, they seem to have gone through several different stores. In another shop, they run from a rather scary-looking seller. After much searching, they rest in a plaza in the middle of the city. Sitting on a bench, he says he can't afford those expensive staffs. She then explains that since many mages are nobles, they focus on appearance. He says he'll search alone so as not to take up any more of her time. Annoyed, she yells that she's staying with him until the end. Just then, they spot a shop with a staff sign out front. Seeing the place, she says it looks like they sell staffs there too. A man then warns them not to go into that shop under any circumstances. Another young man explains that the seller there pressures people into buying things. Looking at the sign, he reflects on things people don't want. Frightened by the warning, she pulls on his sleeve, afraid of the shopkeeper. She then begs him not to go into that place, no matter what. Ignoring the warnings, he opens the door and decides to enter the shop. He then says that if the shop is so bad, it should have gone out of business by now. Entering the place, he finds himself in a dark and very dusty environment. Behind him, the girl looks on, scared of what they might find. He then approaches a counter, observing the items for sale. A man then asks if he's a customer or just looking. Carving a piece of wood, the shopkeeper sits on a stool, looking intimidating. He then says that with so many staffs out there, the young man ended up in his shop. The protagonist just stares at the man, showing no reaction. Suddenly, the shopkeeper's gaze changes, as if he's noticed something. Pointing at the young man, he seems to have noticed something very strange. Yelling furiously, he throws a knife in his direction, startling everyone. He then says he has no intention of selling him a thing. Pointing at the young man, he yells that he has no staffs to sell to swordsmen. Hearing his words, he is surprised by the shopkeeper's reaction. Scared, she says she knew the place was dangerous and that they should leave. Rejecting her suggestion, he states that he's going to buy a staff right there. With a smile, he says that this shopkeeper has really piqued his interest. Surprised, the girl asks if he's really going to choose a staff from that shop. He then turns to the shopkeeper and asks what made him think that. Watching the young man closely, the shopkeeper begins to analyze every detail about him. He looks at the way the young man dresses and how he carries himself. Analyzing his hands, the shopkeeper continues to look for important clues. He also notices the way the young man steps on the floor as he moves. Pointing at the boy, he says his center of gravity is subtle. Remembering his past as a knight, he stares at the shopkeeper without saying a word. Behind him, the girl says that Oscar isn't a real swordsman. He then reflects that he didn't expect the shopkeeper to analyze him so quickly. Standing in the shop, he decides to tell the curious shopkeeper the truth. He reveals that he started learning magic half a year ago, leaving the man surprised. With a smile, the girl says he's a student at the Magic Academy. Thoughtfully, the shopkeeper asks why he's looking for a new staff. He then explains that the staff he was using broke during a fight. Handing over the broken weapon, he shows the staff's condition to the shopkeeper. Analyzing the object, the shopkeeper says it's completely useless now. He then explains that the internal magic circle was destroyed by an excess of mana. Not understanding, he asks what the shopkeeper means by that. The shopkeeper explains that larger staves can handle more mana, but they're harder to use. Holding the broken staff, he says the beginner's shape is more intuitive. Remembering his teachers, he notes that their staves are large and complex. He then asks what kind of staff the shopkeeper thinks would suit him. The shopkeeper replies that he hasn't decided if he'll sell one to him yet. Walking through the shop, he approaches the young man, who stares at him, confused. He then challenges him to choose the best staff in the entire shop. Pointing to the shelf, he says he'll sell it if he's satisfied with the choice. Looking at the options, He begins to analyze which staff he should choose. Behind him, the girl and the shopkeeper watch, awaiting his decision. She then reflects that a staff's value is determined by its materials. Suddenly, he reaches out his hand and seems to feel something in one of the staves. She wonders if that might be a rare staff, made from hagonome wood. Shocked by the item, she reflects that one of those is worth a year of luxury. With a hopeful look, she hopes that Oscar will notice that staff. He then turns, as if sensing a magical presence. Holding a simple staff, he says he has finally decided which one to take. He then shows a piece of wood, saying he'll take that one. The girl and the shopkeeper stare at him, shocked by his unusual choice. She then yells that the most expensive staff in the shop is the other one. He then explains that he wasn't asked to find an expensive staff, but a good one. With a serious look, the shopkeeper asks why he chose that staff. With a smile, he says it was just a feeling, that the staff felt warm. He then touches the shopkeeper with the staff, who looks at him with disdain. With the staff in hand, he says the object isn't broken. He concludes by saying that losing your equipment is the scariest thing. With a smile, he says that this is a good staff for its user. The shopkeeper stares at him, surprised by his precise analysis of the object. Suddenly, the man turns and looks at him with a surprised expression. He then asks if the shopkeeper will sell him the staff he chose. The shopkeeper reveals that staff was made for his son a long time ago. Confused, he asks why the staff is in the shop if it's not for sale. He then says that the staff's owner broke before the tool did. On the counter, a photo shows the shopkeeper next to his young son. Holding the staff, he says the object can't be called good. With his back turned, he seems to be dismissing the two from his dark shop. He says it's a shame, but the girl comforts him, saying it will be okay. Suddenly, the shopkeeper asks where they think they're going now. Not understanding, he turns to the man, confused by his question. The shopkeeper tells him to wait, as he's going to get a staff that will suit him. Hearing the news, the two are overjoyed and celebrate. Relieved, she says she was very nervous, and he apologizes. Suddenly, the shop door opens, revealing a new figure. It was the same man who attacked them in the forest, surprising everyone. With a shocked look, he asks what they are doing there. Understanding nothing, the two just stare at the man, surprised by his appearance. Holding his whip, the man glares at the group with a menacing look. With wide eyes, the protagonist realizes the danger they're in. The girl then asks if the professor also came to the shop to buy a wand. He says yes, hiding his true intentions for being there. Just then, the shopkeeper calls out to the professor, seeming to already know him. Saying he seems busy, the professor says his goodbyes and leaves the shop. Leaving the shop, he walks down the street, away from the group of students. She then comments that he's already gone and wonders what he wanted. The shopkeeper says he's as restless as ever, showing disdain for the man. Handing him a new staff, he says this will be his new battle partner. Surprised, he stares at the staff, wondering what kind of weapon it is. Made of wood, the staff has an axe blade on its upper end. The shopkeeper explains that the staff was made from the legendary origin tree. This tree, which never dies, is on a very distant island nation. The tree's foliage remains radiant, with a canopy that is always green and alive. The girl shouts that wands from that tree are a treasure of immense value. With a smile, the shopkeeper says she's right. The item is very resilient. Still startled, she says a staff like that must be very expensive. The shopkeeper reveals the staff was meant for his son when he returned. With his back turned, he says that just like his son's wand, it is not for sale. Sitting on a bench, he shouts that he won't sell any other wands. He then explains that there isn't another wand in the shop suitable for him. Holding the staff, he prepares to accept the shopkeeper's gift. With a smile, he thanks him deeply for all the support and understanding. The shopkeeper then rushes him, telling him to try out the new staff right away. Holding the weapon, he prepares to test the power of his new equipment. With his eyes closed, he begins to concentrate to use his magic. Channeling his energy, he envelops the entire staff with his blue mana. The shopkeeper watches him with a serious look and a slight expression of surprise. He then says the feeling is strange, as if he's been using it for years. Shouting at them, the shopkeeper tells them to leave as he can't lose customers. Remembering the professor, he turns and decides to ask the man a question. He then asks if Professor Amon is a regular at this shop. Back at the academy, the students gather in the classroom for the next lesson. One of the students points, saying that's the group that went to the cemetery. They comment that it was a miracle the group returned in one piece from the incident. One of them reveals that Levin tried to save his own skin and abandon the others. Suddenly, the professor cracks his whip, startling the entire class. Annoyed, he yells at the students who apologize for talking. The professor then stares at the protagonist, who watches him in silence from his seat. He just stares back at the professor, showing no reaction to his gaze. The shopkeeper reveals that Amon was the captain of his son's squad. He also says that the professor was on the battlefield when his son died. In a flashback, the professor appears at the shop's door, talking to the shopkeeper. He concludes by saying it was Eamon who brought the staff back. Holding the broken staff, he continues to listen to the shopkeeper's story. Shocked, the girl says she had no idea about the story behind the professor. Pointing at the young man, he says the professor was always kind to his son. Hearing the story, he looks at the man with a very serious expression. Holding the staff, he says the weapon was used heavily in battle. He then says his son must have been an exceptional mage. Surprised by the analysis, the shopkeeper asks how he knew that. Remembering the class, he sits down, ready to unmask the true culprit. He recalls that on the day of the training, Professor Eamon was one of the instructors. With a look of hatred, he says there's no mistake in his suspicion. He then concludes that the professor is the mastermind behind the attack. He reflects that this is his chance, as the professor knows nothing. With a determined look, he says that this time he will be the one to strike first. In a dark room, the professor communicates with a mysterious entity. The entity says it admires the prowess he has shown on the battlefield. The professor replies that he is well aware of the expectations placed on him. The entity then asks if he found the school more treacherous than war. Answering no, he seems a bit uncomfortable with the question. He then promises to achieve military results without any further delay. After the conversation, he turns and leaves the room, thoughtful about the mission. Standing in the middle of the room, he reflects on the recent events. Back at the academy, the scene shows the imposing building of the institution. The director asks if it was Eamon who attacked him during training. He says he finds it hard to believe the accusation against the professor. The director explains that the professor was a brave man who risked his life. The protagonist says that even so, he is sure he's not mistaken. The director says that if he claims so, it must be true, but he needs proof. With a smile, he says that's exactly why he is there. Surprised by the plan, the director listens carefully to every detail of the strategy. He says that just like in training, the professor will attack again. He concludes that if there's an opportunity, the enemy will strike without hesitation. Hearing the plan, the director becomes thoughtful about the next steps to take. He then reveals that there is an escort mission for the Imperial Princess. Princess Ariel was scheduled to enroll in the Academy's first class, but due to the side effects of a spell, she had to postpone her enrollment. Professor Ruth reveals that her enrollment was postponed for this reason. With a serious look, she says they must go receive Her Highness in the capital. The professor then reveals that this will be the mission assigned to all of them. While reading a book, one of the female students seems very interested in the mission. The protagonist's rival also listens to the instructions with great attention and seriousness. He then reflects that this is the perfect condition for Eamon to attack him. The professor turns to the class and asks if anyone has any questions. At that moment, the rival raises his hand and calls the professor ready to speak. With a serious look, he asks about the strength of the new class member. He questions if he can assume he has strength that rivals their own. Hearing the question, he stares at his rival with an expression of pure certainty. The professor says that, judging by the training, he has already surpassed them all. Shocked by the revelation, he stares at the professor, not believing what he heard. One of the female students, who was reading a book, also seems surprised by the news. He then says that the man he knew was mediocre and had no power at all. The protagonist just listens to the outburst, showing no reaction. The professor points out that, even so, several important people praise him highly. He says his grades were superior and that he doesn't understand the situation. With a look of anger, he says he finds it all incomprehensible. Pointing at the protagonist, he challenges him to a duel in front of everyone. He then demands that the boy show every drop of his power as a mage. The professor seems tired of the student's attitude, but doesn't interfere in the fight. She then reflects that with things as they are, she fears for the future of the mission. With a smile, the professor says the loser of the duel will be removed. Staring at his rival, he accepts the challenge, leaving the other boy shocked. In an arena, the two take their positions, ready for the duel to begin. Holding his staff, he wonders how things came to this. Suddenly, he notices something and looks startled at his opponent. The rival raises his wand and begins to summon an ice spell. Several magic ice circles appear around him as he stares back in surprise. Shouting, the rival tells him to prepare for the coming attack. He then reflects that he cannot be removed from the mission under any circumstances. Gripping his staff tightly, he prepares for the imminent battle. With a serious look, he concentrates, ready to use all his power. Shouting, he says he accepts the challenge from his rival, Zazan Gilotis. Suddenly, the training dummy shatters violently. The onlookers comment that it was a direct hit, just as expected from a son of House Golotis. The young man stares at the destroyed target before him. The training targets then show the heavy damage from the powerful impact. Suddenly, the young man has a sudden realization and reacts with surprise. He remembers that House Galotis is a prestigious lineage of ice mages, and that his brother always lived up to every expectation. In light of this, His own lack of magical talent was undeniable. Even so, he trained relentlessly, determination etched on his face. That's why he trained harder than anyone else, seeking to catch up to his brother and everyone's expectations. And above all, he trained for an even greater purpose. With a shout, Zazan declares he will become a man worthy of the Gelotus name and summons an ice spear. In response to the spell, a magic circle appears before Oscar to defend against the impending attack. With his light blue eyes fixed on the attack, the young man focuses completely. At the last second, he throws himself aside, escaping the massive wall of ice. Impressed, his rival comments that Oscar dodges well and challenges him to handle the next attack. Zazan then casts a powerful mass freezing spell. With that, Oscar realizes his right hand is freezing rapidly. He then grabs his frozen hand with the other, trying to break free from the ice. Next, the young man summons the power of fire to free himself. Watching the scene, Zazan observes the shards of ice breaking. The young man stands amidst the flames, facing his opponent. Oscar maintains his serious expression, resting his hand on his face. From a distance, two figures carefully watch the battle unfold. The observer comments that by engulfing himself in flames to break the ice, the young man shows he's used to battle. The man then muses that despite the young man's skill, there was a catch. The spectator watches the fight intently. He explains that as long as there's a huge difference in mana capacity, being overwhelmed by brute force is inevitable. With that, Oscar finds himself surrounded by massive ice spears erupting from the ground. Zazan then admits that the boy certainly seems to have extraordinary talent for a commoner. Pointing his wand, he adds that, however, there's still a catch. Zazan declares that the young man is no match for the years of effort he has accumulated. The scene then cuts to a hand touching the image of a mountain. Next, a little girl is seen reading a book at the feet of a mysterious figure. Back in the present, one of the onlookers wonders what's happening. In the middle of the battlefield, Oscar channels his energy through his staff. The young man then apologizes for the delay, explaining he needed some time to prepare. Watching this, Zazan questions what the young man meant by prepare. With a smile, Oscar announces that now it's his turn to go on the offensive. His opponent, however, yells that it's too late and casts his binding spell. With that, an ice prison instantly forms around the young man. Surprised, the young man wonders if the attack was hidden within the previous ice spears. Zazan then charges forward, declaring that his mana refinement is now complete. Next, he lunges at Oscar for a direct attack. Even facing the threat, the young man states he can win with the help of his staff. Soon after, Oscar summons a blade of fire, preparing to counterattack. With a single motion, the fire from the staff shatters the ice prison around him. At this, Zazan watches the scene in shock, not understanding what just happened. From the stands, the woman with glasses also watches the turnaround in disbelief. The young man feels his body is light, and his mana flows exactly as he imagines, manifesting one spell after another. He concludes that the feeling of using magic without flaws or delays is simply electrifying. Without wasting time, Oscar attacks with a blast of fire that hits his opponent head-on. In a panic, Zazan yells that his defense spell was completely shattered. Facing his opponent on the ground, the young man calls him a fool for his recklessness. Kneeling, Zazan keeps staring at the other, unable to react. A memory surfaces in his mind, where he asked his brother what he could do to become like him. His brother then replies that he was overestimating him, claiming to be no one special. He continues, explaining that there are people in the world who would make him look like a mere shadow in comparison. His brother's voice concludes that truly overwhelming talents exist, as the image focuses on Oscar. Suddenly, the woman with glasses shouts, ordering that it's enough. With that, she takes her position and declares the match officially decided. A short time later, someone vents their frustration by kicking a crate hard. Next, the young man leans on a table, grinding his teeth. As he remembers the others mocking him, the young man wonders why he has to endure such humiliation. With a distraught face, he concludes that all of this is Oscar's fault. Suddenly, his outburst is interrupted by a knock on the door. He opens a crack in the door and wonders aloud who it could be at this hour. Upon seeing who is outside, his face fills with astonishment. The boy's voice barely comes out as he recognizes the figure. Later, a large academy classroom is practically empty. In the stands, Oscar is talking calmly with one of his classmates. Suddenly, the young man looks to the side, noticing movement at the entrance. Soon after, Zazan enters, accompanied by two other students. The newcomer stares at Oscar with a hostile expression. He then recalls the day he admitted to envying Oscar, explaining that all his effort was surpassed by the other's talent. In that memory, the white-haired boy sharply refuses the offered help. Then, he declares with conviction that it doesn't matter how long it takes because one day he will surpass him. Back in the present, the young man flashes a confident smile. He then states he doesn't intend to stop either, and to that end, he'll settle things with Eamon the next day. The next day, the academy's bell marks the start of another morning. Facing the class, the teacher announces they'll do another mana measurement before class begins. At that moment, the sound of hurried footsteps breaks the silence of the room. With that, the boy with the bandaged hand appears at the entrance. Upon seeing him, the teacher simply comments that Levin is late. Meanwhile, a classmate taunts him, asking if he was so scared he didn't even want to leave his dorm, but another tells him to stop. The red-haired boy, however, doesn't react to the provocation and keeps walking. Ignoring the comments, the young man sits down in his seat. From his desk, Oscar observes the newcomer's arm, noticing the injury. The other, in turn, ignores the stares and starts reading a book. Calling for silence, the teacher announces they will proceed with the mana measurement. With that, the students start heading to the front of the room. Soon, a female student comments to Oscar, surprised that his mana capacity has increased again in such a short time. He then replies that he's starting to get used to his staff, making the girl consider getting a new one too. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a call from behind. When they turn around, they see it was Levin who called them. The boy approaches and calls out directly to Oscar. Then, Levin asks the black-haired young man to teach him how to become strong. Not understanding the sudden request, Oscar asks what he's talking about. The other then accuses him of playing dumb, stating that he knows his secret. The scene then focuses on Levin's bandaged hand, as if to give weight to his accusation. Surprised, Oscar silently wonders what kind of secret that could be. Soon the scene shifts to the two of them facing off in an empty training field at night. Levin then comments that the other was quite meticulous for having already reserved the place. Ignoring the comment, Oscar asks directly what secret he was talking about. At this, Levin states that he knows exactly what it's about, referring to the power used to defeat the dragon. At that moment, an image shows the black-haired young man using a bow-shaped weapon. Then, the other accuses him of having also received some kind of power. Still confused, Oscar asks what the hell he's talking about. At the response, Levin grinds his teeth in frustration. He then yells, asking if Oscar plans to keep treating him like an idiot, just like everyone else. In a fit of rage, his fist is suddenly enveloped in energy. Right after, the boy's arm begins to transform into a monstrous claw. Witnessing the scene, Oscar backs away, completely shocked. Frightened by his own transformation, Levin wonders what this is. Worried, Oscar approaches and asks if he's okay. Desperate, the other shouts that he doesn't know what's happening and that he wasn't warned about this. Then, the boy lets out a cry of pain as the energy in his arm seems to spin out of control. With that, huge energy crystals begin to sprout from the ground around him. As he jumps to dodge, the young man wonders what this is. Observing the other's movements, he realizes the boy seems to be controlled by something. At that moment, Oscar remembers Levin's accusation that he had also received a power. Shocked by the possibility, the young man begins to understand what might be happening. Amid the chaos, the other screams, questioning if all of this is his fault. He laments about what was wrong with trying to survive on his own, wishing only that he had power. With a desperate look on his face, the boy claims his real intention was to protect everyone. Hearing that, Oscar's expression changes completely. Without hesitating, he leaps toward the out-of-control boy, wielding his weapon. The young man lands nimbly on one of the crystals right behind the other. With a hand on his shoulder, Oscar calls out to get his attention. With a quick move, he tackles him to the ground to immobilize him. Then, Oscar knocks the boy unconscious. Then, he questions aloud if the one responsible for this would go so far as to toy with people. Shouting towards the sky, the young man demands that Eamon, who he knows is watching, finally show himself. Faced with silence, he once again orders the person to come out of their hiding place. Amidst a murder of crows, a man with an eye patch finally appears, commenting that the boy lacks discipline. The man then adds that this is the expected attitude of a mere commoner. In response, Oscar glares back at him, gripping his weapon tightly. Before him, the man with the eye patch looks down on him with contempt. With a cynical look, Eamon remarks that a truly tragic accident occurred here today. He continues, explaining that some students were just training after class when one of them lost control. The man then concludes the story, lamenting that it resulted in an accident where a promising young man lost his life. Effortlessly, his opponent blocks the projectiles with energy barriers. He then comments on how barbaric that kind of attack is. The man then warns that he will make Oscar kneel immediately. Immediately after, several magic circles appear around the young man, summoning creatures to attack him. The beasts charge all at once, forcing the young man to defend himself while still carrying Levin. At that moment, Oscar remembers an explanation about his opponent's familiar control magic. His master had explained that the technique involves engraving magical formulas onto monster corpses to control them like puppets. He also warned him there's a limit to how many familiars can be controlled, so there's only one way to handle it. The master's advice was clear: ignore the caster and prioritize destroying the familiars. Despite that, he warned him not to fight alone, as his enemy was at the Holy Master level and might have other tricks up his sleeve. Back in the present, Oscar confirms to himself that he already knew this, and that it had been his plan all along. However, the young man realizes there's a problem with his plan. He then laments, as his true intention was to protect everyone. At that moment, one of the beasts charges at him, forcing him to react. Without hesitating, Oscar fires his rifle and destroys the creature with a single shot. Right after the shot, the young man kneels beside Levin as the familiar dissolves into the air. Seeing this, his opponent asks why he's so angry and questions if he's really fighting for Levin. Oscar then glares back and asks what's the problem if he is. The man scoffs, pointing out they only teamed up once, but the young man replies that's reason enough. At this, the enemy reveals that Levin feels differently and sought power only to defeat him. He insists that Levin sees him as an enemy, a mere commoner. Faced with this revelation, the young man falls silent for a moment. Then, he raises his head and asks, what's wrong with that? The unexpected answer leaves his opponent visibly surprised. Oscar then declares that regardless of his motives, Levin chose to become stronger, and he won't forgive him for taking advantage of those feelings. However, as soon as he tries to use his magic, the circle in his hand shatters. Surprised, the young man realizes he can't construct his magic formulas correctly. His opponent then explains that they don't allow talented commoners to exist. The man continues, saying that's precisely why he recognized his talent more than anyone else. He then reveals he made perfect preparations to deal with the boy. With that, his adversary summons a gigantic creature right behind him. The monster then charges forward, surrounded by a powerful aura of energy. Oscar holds his ground as the energy surrounds him on all sides. The young man then wonders if those familiars are absorbing his mana and interfering with his magic. Then he questions if his enemy really thought he would show up here without a plan. His opponent replies that he had anticipated the boy would be capable of at least that much. Suddenly, new creatures with sharp claws land on the ground. In an instant, Oscar finds himself surrounded by beasts growling at him. The enemy explains that although neither of them can use new magic formulas, the magic already engraved on his familiars will continue to work. Hearing this, the young man turns his head to the side. The man then declares their final lesson ends here and tells Oscar to take this lesson with him to the afterlife. Facing the threat, Oscar stands with Levin in his arms, completely surrounded by the beasts. With a serious look, he comments that he always wondered why such excellent mages were defeated so overwhelmingly. Clutching his staff tightly, the young man states he now finally understands why. Then, he reveals he's holding just a small wand in his hand. The young man then comments that it must have been a terrifying experience. He then describes the terror of having your magic stripped away while surrounded by monsters. Turning to his opponent, Oscar announces he's going to teach him a lesson. The young man then concludes, saying it will be a special lesson of his own making. In a quiet office, a man in a pointed hat sits alone at his desk. Suddenly, his silence is broken by a knock on the door. Opening the door, a woman excuses herself and asks him to review some documents. The man then asks if this is about the next day's mission. Reading the papers, he confirms that nothing must happen to His Imperial Highness. The woman then comments that there are more requests to use the training grounds than usual, which shows how dedicated the students are. Speaking of which, she mentions that Levin is studying on his own with Professor Amon. Right after, the assistant shows a document with a portrait of the professor. Surprised, the man in the hat asks if the name he heard was really Amon. Back in the dark forest, Oscar faces his opponent and the familiar he summoned. With a gesture, the opponent orders the creatures to advance on the young man. The man then explains that as long as that familiar is present, no new magic formulas can be created here. He continues, clarifying that the familiar's own summoning magic, however, is being maintained. Analyzing the situation, Oscar begins to understand what that truly means. With that, he concludes there must be a way to manifest a magic formula anyway. Suddenly, the young man seems to get an idea, noticing a flaw in the enemy's technique. In that same instant, the creature lunges forward, growling, giving him no time to react. Without hesitation, Oscar extends his left arm toward the approaching monster. Facing the attack, he brutally counterattacks, destroying the creature's head with his bare hands. Believing he's won, the opponent remarks that another threat has been eliminated. However, what actually happened was that the young man shoved his arm into the mouth of a smaller familiar in the way. Immediately after, a huge explosion of energy shoots out from inside the creature's body toward the sky. Shocked, the man yells, not understanding how the young man could still use magic. From the impact, the small creature that served as a channel for the spell falls lifeless to the ground. Oscar then explains that he saw the magic formula inside the familiar's body, which allowed him to cast magic as long as it didn't touch the air. Thus, he was able to use his staff to draw the magic circle directly on the monster's body. The opponent refuses to believe it, saying it's ridiculous that he could see the formula that way. He then asks what happened to the staff, since he only saw the young man use his left arm in the attack. Faced with this doubt, Oscar states that he can manifest a magic formula even without a staff. The man is paralyzed, trying to understand if the young man cast a spell of that caliber using only his fingers. With that, Oscar asks him what kind of familiar he has, now that his ace in the hole is gone. Indignant, the opponent asks if the young man thinks he's already won. Without hesitating, the young man points his staff and fires a huge pillar of fire at the magic circles. Then, he announces the name of his fire blade spell. Soon, the magic manifests as a great wave of flames that rushes toward the enemy. The man quickly conjures an energy barrier to protect himself from the attack. The opponent boasts that he's a sovereign of magic, even without his familiar, but is soon surprised by something. He then realizes his shield has been pierced and accuses the young man of hiding his power, warning that the trick won't work a second time. Facing the threat, Oscar simply replies that there won't be a second time. Surprised, the man yells when he realizes his own staff has been destroyed. The opponent stands paralyzed, staring at the remains of his weapon, unsure how to react. Taking advantage of the situation, the young man asks how far he can go without his staff. Desperate, the other man tells him to wait. He then promises to leave and tell the young man everything he wants to know. Oscar then offers a recommendation for the post of mage's apprentice, and the opponent accepts immediately, stating there's nothing better. Faced with the response, the young man asks if that's all he has to say. Then, Oscar reassures him, saying he won't kill him as he still needs him to talk. The man then releases his energy and suddenly charges at the young man. He yells that he tried to be humble, but it was all for nothing. The opponent then tells him not to get cocky and calls him a filthy commoner. Soon, a dark aura completely envelops him. Oscar is on alert at the sight. With that, the man summons a gigantic familiar in a magic circle. The creature then begins to break apart into crystal pieces. Then, the fragments begin to cover the summoner's own body. Before Oscar's eyes, the man transforms into a rocky, misshapen creature. The young man then wonders if he's turning into material for a familiar. He continues his analysis, but realizes the transformation is creating a giant stone monster. Without hesitation, the creature charges forward and smashes the ground with a powerful blow in the young man's direction. Right after, however, part of the monster's body begins to dissolve. Witnessing this, Oscar concludes his opponent has completely lost his mind, lamenting that he can no longer capture him without killing him. Then, an aura of energy begins to glow around the young man. With that, he unleashes a spell that creates immense air pressure. However, a mysterious figure appears floating in the air just in time to intervene. The mage then praises the young man, saying he held on well until now. Right after, he introduces himself as a magic saint and announces he'll be taking over the fight from here. However, the monster's body instantly starts to reform. Then, the creature fully reforms and roars at them. Seeing this, the mage notes that the boy seems to be cornered. He then laments that his opponent assimilated with a familiar using such a flawed magic formula. Looking at the creature, the mage says Aemon is a huge disappointment. The boy then notices the mage's aura is completely different from the last time they fought. With that, a powerful aura of energy begins to swirl around the magic saint. The mage then addresses the creature, identifying it as Magic Sovereign Aemon. He continues, saying that as the magic saint and director, he will now pass judgment upon the monster. Facing the threat, the giant creature charges at the two of them. He then prepares a spell, creating a magic circle in front of him. The mage then unleashes an attack, slicing the creature with energy blades. But still, the monster's body keeps restoring itself. Watching this, Oscar wonders what kind of absurd regenerative power that is. Immediately, the monster's pieces start to pull back together. In an instant, the creature fully regenerates and lunges at the mage. The attack sends him flying back violently. Watching the scene, Oscar is left speechless at what just happened. Then, the mage simply vanishes. The creature is left looking around, confused. The mage then asks what the monster is doing, revealing he's been there all along. He then summons a huge magic circle and prepares his next spell. Then, the spell activates and a storm of energy erupts from the ground. Oscar realizes the cuts from that attack are faster than the monster's ability to regenerate. As the creature's body is torn to shreds, the mage says he won't kill it. He explains that he actually has many questions for the sovereign. After the attack, the creature materializes in a humanoid form atop its own remains. Completely wounded, the magic sovereign can only cry out in pain. From above, the magic saint observes the result of his devastating attack. Impressed, Oscar wonders if the mage managed to precisely pierce only the familiar's outer shell. Right after, the boy realizes he's lost too much blood from his wounds. Suddenly, an energy envelops him and begins to heal his body. With that, he looks up toward where the power is coming from. High above, the magic saint floats, looking back down at him. Oscar then realizes that's a magic saint, a level ordinary mages could never hope to reach. Then, a bright light from above shines down on the young man, and so, a gigantic, ornate gate materializes before him. Confused, the boy wonders what it is as he reaches out to touch it. At that moment, a voice warns him not to even think about it. Startled, Oscar wakes up in a bed and yells, "Who's there?" Still confused and looking at his bandaged hand, he wonders if it was all just a dream. Then, a woman beside him remarks that he's finally awake. Professor Isabel then calms him down, explaining he's been unconscious for a whole week and shouldn't push himself. Shocked, the boy repeats in disbelief that he was out for so long, as the woman starts to talk about Eamon. She explains that Eamon is still in a coma and is being kept in the director's workshop. Surprised, Oscar repeats the word director, trying to process the situation. Isabel continues, revealing that Levin is safe because he passed out before completely running out of power. Then, the professor looks him in the eye and asks if he was responsible for that. The boy admits his methods were a bit rough, but that the director would have handled it more delicately. As he says this, his bandaged hand grips the bedsheet tightly. Annoyed, Isabel warns him not to get too full of himself as she pulls his hair. The young man recoils, hand to his head, still feeling the sting from the pull. In a more serious tone, she asks if he wants to become a magic saint, like the director. Looking out the window, Oscar replies that's not quite what he wants. Right after, the boy explains with a smile that he just wants to be able to use magic that way. The woman then asks if that isn't the same thing and concludes that, in that case, the timing is perfect. With that, Isabel hands him a small box, saying it's for him and that he can open it. Without hesitating, the young man takes the box and carefully opens it with his bandaged hands. She then reveals the object inside is the mark of an apprentice mage. Surprised, Oscar repeats quietly, "The mark of an apprentice mage." The woman explains that, like Magic Saint, it's one of the ranks established by the association, revealing hers is magic level. She continues, saying that earning the apprentice rank requires more than just mana, as a mage's entire worth is put to the test. With that, Isabel congratulates Oscar and announces that from this day forward, he is officially authorized to fight monsters as a full-fledged mage. In disbelief, the boy just repeats to himself, "I'm a mage now." Right after, he remembers the mission and asks what happened to the princess's escort. The woman replies that Zazan and the others brought her back safely. With a smile, she remarks that ever since the imperial princess arrived, life in the first class has gotten much more interesting. The scene then cuts to a girl with long blue hair standing in front of a class of students. Meanwhile, at an academy, several students are walking down a hallway. Among them is Oscar, who seems to notice someone as he passes. A young woman with glasses greets him with a cheerful wave. Seeing him, she asks if he's okay, as she'd heard he wasn't feeling well. Confused, he asks why she's asking, and the girl explains that he was gone for a whole week. Oscar then apologizes for worrying her. The young man then changes the subject to start a new conversation. Soon, one of the other students comments that the air feels a bit tense. Beside him, another classmate adjusts his vest while the others watch. The girl then explains the tension is because Her Highness Ariel is about to arrive. Curious, Oscar asks what kind of person she is, and the young woman replies that she's the strongest successor of gravity magic. At that exact moment, a girl with long blue hair appears at the entrance of the hall. With a smile, the newcomer greets everyone with a "good morning." The scene then shows an illustration of gravity magic, created by the first emperor of the Exisfes Empire. It's then explained that this magic was powerful enough to take down even the dragons, the supreme rulers of the skies. The narration continues, explaining that the magic's formula was kept secret and passed down only to the emperor's descendants. Excited, the girl with glasses then reveals that Her Highness Ariel is a practitioner of that very same magic. Hearing this, Oscar remarks that a mage of her caliber should be familiar from his past life, but he doesn't recognize the name. At that moment, one of the young men approaches the newcomer and offers to carry her luggage to her seat. The young woman thanks him for his kindness, but declines the help and invites them to have lunch with her. With a smile, the girl says that sounds like a great idea and suggests they all go as a group. His classmate with glasses comments on how Her Highness Ariel is always so elegant, while Oscar notes that she doesn't act like typical royalty in a good way. Then, the young woman walks down the stairs under the admiring gazes of the other students. Suddenly, her gaze stops on someone, and she asks who that person is. The girl then turns in Oscar's direction, who is watching her from his seat. Noticing he's been spotted, the young man stands up and says it's an honor to meet her. With a smile, he introduces himself as Oscar, and adds that it's a pleasure to meet her. Hearing the name, the Highness's expression changes and she begins to say, "So you're the one." But her surprise quickly turns into a faint smile. Right after, the young woman formally introduces herself as Ariel Barvutes. With her hands clasped, she then asks Oscar if she could have a moment of his time after class. Faced with the unexpected request, everyone around the young man reacts with shocked expressions. Later, Oscar waits outside with a slightly apprehensive look. As he arrives, he wonders if it's really appropriate for him to be there, since this is the girls' dormitory. Just then, one of the building's large doors opens beside him. From the doorway, Ariel smiles and invites him in, showing him the way. Inside, the two sit in silence in the girl's room. Oscar then asks if she's sure it's okay for him to be in her room, but the young woman assures him there are no other eyes or ears here. The young man picks up on the situation and asks if this is a conversation she'd rather have in private. With a serious expression, Ariel says she'll be direct. She then asks him to please withdraw from the exchange competition. Surprised by the request, Oscar is speechless for a moment. Not understanding, the young man asks what she's talking about. In response, the girl simply shows a coin in her hand. Right after, she reveals that he is also a representative for the annual Magic Sword competition. Oscar remains silent, processing the information. The event is an annual festival where representatives from the Magic and Sword academies compete to show off their fighting skills. Oscar then remembers that in his past life, he withdrew because he hated the idea of facing mages of his own generation. With that, he wonders if this is the price for his decision. Ariel then states that when it comes to the upcoming competition, she cannot afford to lose. The girl continues, explaining that she's not looking down on him, but believes others are better suited for the role of representative. Hearing that, Oscar understands this is what the director meant when he said he would be useful. The young man then assumes she must also be confused, as she was likely appointed by the director without any explanation. Surprised by his comment, the girl just stares at him in silence. With a smirk, he declares that the situation is starting to get interesting. The young man's unexpected reaction leaves her completely speechless. He then reveals he wants to see how well his magic does against swordsmen his own age. Then, Oscar wonders aloud how exactly he's supposed to fight a swordsman using magic. Furthermore, the young man admits he's quite curious about her gravity magic. Hearing that, the girl's eyes widen in pure shock. Annoyed, the girl shouts that's enough and asks why he's acting this way. Her explosive reaction catches Oscar completely off guard. She then points a finger at the young man and warns him that someone with that kind of attitude will never survive the hellish training that's about to begin. Far away, a mysterious cloaked figure stops before the large gates of a castle. The newcomer then remarks to himself that he never imagined he would be the one to pass through them. The narration explains that in the annual competition between the Magic and Swordsmanship Academies, teamwork is essential. An instructor then reveals that due to the nature of interpersonal combat, they've always been at a disadvantage, but that was about to change. He confidently announces that this year, with Imperial Princess Ariel present, they will finally achieve victory. In response, the princess assures them she will do her best to meet everyone's expectations. Shortly after, one of the young men approaches to address Her Highness. The white-haired young man, Zazan, assures her there's no need to bother her, as he will crush the swordsman by himself. The girl smiles and says she looks forward to seeing that happen. At this, the young man's eyes fill with a new determination. Oscar, in turn, stares at him with the same silent intensity. Zazan comments that this is a good opportunity to show how much he's grown, to which the other replies that he's also gotten even stronger. The interaction between the two leaves the princess visibly confused. Suddenly, the instructor claps his hands to get everyone's attention. With that, he announces it's time to move on to the main topic of the meeting. The man explains that before the match, it's customary for the representatives to invite an outside swordsman for a training duel. Hearing this, Oscar is completely shocked, not understanding the proposal. In disbelief, Oscar asks aloud if that is his father. The man then comments that it's been a while and that he's happy to see the young man is doing well. The instructor then introduces him as Brian, a swordmaster permitted to have many disciples and with guaranteed teaching skills. He continues, explaining that they had been extending the invitation for some time, but this is the first year Brian has agreed to participate. Facing the young people's gazes, the newcomer confirms he is there to ensure their victory. With a serious look, the swordmaster then tells them to get ready. Beside him, Zazan and the princess exchange a silent glance. The girl then asks Oscar if he comes from a family of swordsmen, to which the young man replies that his father just founded a guild in his generation. The revelation shocks her, leading her to wonder if he's a commoner raised in a family of swordsmen. Another young man also silently questions if someone like Oscar should really be their representative. Brian then interrupts the moment and asks the group for their understanding of what a swordsman is. Promptly, Zazan answers that they are individuals who cover their bodies and weapons with sword kai to enhance their combat abilities. The master agrees with the definition and then asks how one should fight such an opponent. The white-haired young man explains that the strategy is to keep their distance and suppress them with long-range magic attacks. Hearing the answer, the instructor simply remarks that he understands. Brian then says he will start by correcting that misconception. The master then challenges him, saying that if the young man hits him with any magic, he will win. The white-haired young man then asks if the instructor is sure he wants to stand so far away. The other simply confirms that he is. Brian then instructs him to cast his spell with all his might on his signal. Faced with the scene, Oscar and the others watch the demonstration about to begin. Oscar first wonders what Brian plans to do from that distance, but then shakes his head. The young man then states that, in fact, the master is too close, much to the girl's surprise. Without further delay, one of the instructors announces the start of the combat. Immediately, the white-haired young man conjures an ice spear. The magical projectile speeds toward the instructor. However, in the blink of an eye, Brian dodges the attack and charges directly at his opponent. The speed of the movement leaves the princess completely stunned. Beside her, Oscar watches the scene with a focused gaze. The white-haired young man can barely process what happened, not understanding how the instructor suddenly appeared right in front of him. Standing right in front of the young man, the instructor explains that this is the speed of a swordsman. With the demonstration over, Brian simply calls for the next participant. Hearing the call, Oscar raises his hand and says he is ready. The young man then takes his position in the arena, standing face to face with the master. With a smile, the instructor says he's going to see if he's been slacking off in his training. Watching from a distance, one of the students comments that this, then, is a real swordsman. The white-haired young man points out there's no time to use magic, which makes the princess wonder how they could possibly fight. Back in the arena, the instructor raises her staff to begin the combat. With that, she announces the start of the fight, and Oscar rushes forward in the blink of an eye. The instructor carefully watches the young man's attack, approaching at high speed. However, Brian's charge is so fast that the young man only manages to block the blow at the last second. The tip of the master's weapon stops right near Oscar's neck, who blocks its advance with his staff. The scene then reveals that the instructor is using a magic circle to power his attack. Even under pressure, the young man declares it a draw and asks if the other would consider that fair. Brian replies that he's relieved, as it seems his student hasn't lost his touch. The two remain with their weapons crossed in a tense stalemate. Watching from afar, the princess is astonished that he managed to dodge that swift attack. She deduces that, being from a family of swordsmen, Oscar is already familiar with that fighting style, which could be useful. He then turns to get the princess's attention. Brian then approaches and informs the young woman that only she is left for the test. The girl replies that, although it's a rare opportunity, she will have to decline the invitation. She then explains that she hasn't yet managed to fully master her power. The young woman then reveals her magic, warning that she might end up killing the instructor by accident. Witnessing the scene, the master recognizes it as gravity magic. Oscar's eyes widen, unable to finish his sentence. Soon after, the princess turns and walks away down the corridor. Alone, the young woman comments to herself that she managed to survive the situation. She comments that Zazan is as skilled as the rumors said. She continues her analysis, observing that Oscar is also used to fighting against swordsmen. At this realization, the princess smiles and comments that things might get interesting at this rate. The young woman then concludes that they can win without her needing to fight. Suddenly, a footstep echoes down the hallway. Surprised, the girl turns to see who is approaching. Before her, Oscar stares at her in silence. Not understanding, she asks what business the young man has with her. The young man then questions her, asking if it might be her, the one who can't use gravity magic. Facing the girl, Oscar finally asks if she's the one who actually can't use gravity magic. The young woman is left completely speechless by the sudden accusation. Trying to play it off, she laughs and asks what he's talking about, since she just showed him her magic. Unfazed, Oscar corrects her, stating that the spell she used was Wind Lance. He then remembers having seen that same spell used before. Hearing the truth, the girl freezes on the spot, not knowing how to react. The young man continues his explanation, revealing she used multiple wind lances to simulate the ground collapsing. With that, he confronts her directly, wanting to know why she lied about it being gravity magic. Caught red-handed, the young woman can only let out a gasp of shock. Right after, Oscar says he doesn't care why she lied. The girl stares at him, not understanding the sudden change in tone. With an excited smile, the young man says that, however, if she really can use that magic, he enthusiastically asks her to show him her real gravity magic. The young man stands there with a big smile, excitedly clenching one of his fists. With her eyes closed, the girl finally admits there's no point in hiding it anymore. She then remarks that Oscar has very sharp eyes, as no one before, not even the teachers, had noticed her trick. Then, the young woman finally confesses that she actually can't use gravity magic. The scene shifts to a childhood memory, where a voice asks little Ariel why she's pouting. The girl explains she couldn't use the hereditary magic again, while her mother comments that she really hates to lose. The little girl then argues that her tutor said her mother would be very happy if she succeeded. With a gentle gesture, the woman comforts her, saying it's okay even if she can't use the magic. Instead, she says with a smile that she would much rather see her daughter smile. The narration explains that despite suffering from a serious illness, her mother was always a kind and warm person. However, this happy memory is suddenly interrupted by the image of a flower bouquet breaking apart. Right after, the scene shows the woman coughing up a large amount of blood in her bed. Desperate, a maid runs to help her and yells for someone to call a doctor quickly. Outside, little Ariel runs toward a carriage, calling for her mother. Reaching them, the girl asks where they are taking her. The mother then explains that the emperor arranged for a place with fresh air so she could recover. Not understanding, the little girl says her father never did something like this before, and asks if she'll really get better if she goes there. With a tired expression, the mother just watches her daughter's innocent question. With a forced smile, she then assures her that she's sure she'll get better. Next, the woman confesses that her only worry is leaving a little crybaby like her behind, all alone. Hearing this, the little girl wipes her tears and promises she'll be fine. The girl then reveals she's learned how to use gravity magic and asks her mother to just focus on getting better. Right after, the carriage departs, taking the woman far away. Alone, Ariel watches it leave while whispering her mother's name. With that, the girl is left behind, completely helpless in the middle of the courtyard. The narration then reveals that her lie about having magic spread quickly. However, the truth is, she was never able to use her family's hereditary magic. Years later, the scene shows a grown-up Ariel sitting on a park bench with Oscar. The young man then comments that she did a good job keeping her secret for so long. The young woman explains that she actually used other spells to replicate gravity magic, as she had already shown him. With a smile, Ariel says that while it's a generous offer, she must respectfully decline. Next, she admits with a faint smile that her trick doesn't seem to have worked on him. Clutching her dress, the girl explains she just doesn't want to cause her mother unnecessary worry. Therefore, Ariel begs Oscar to win the exchange tournament so she won't have to fight. Faced with her plea, the young man just closes his eyes and replies that he understands her situation. Relieved, the young woman starts to thank him, but is cut off before she can finish the sentence. Oscar then proposes they train together so she can use gravity magic by the time the tournament starts. Surprised by the suggestion, Ariel indignantly asks if he was even paying attention to what she said. The scene then shifts to a past memory, showing the young man teaching two boys how to use a sword. Back in the present, Oscar replies with a smile that he's actually a very good teacher. Elsewhere, a narration explains that magic is a power granted only to the chosen and worthy. Right after, a voice states, "There is someone who arrogantly disrespects this principle and seeks to belittle them." Therefore, the man demands the cooperation of a masked figure as their representative in the upcoming exchange tournament. As a reward, he promises that once they succeed, the other's wish will be granted. With the deal sealed, the masked figure turns and leaves the room in silence. The doors close right behind, leaving the mysterious man alone in the darkness. Then, a voice narrates that swordsmanship is the opposite of magic, and that a certain someone will know its power firsthand. The scene opens at the Ares Imperial Fencing Academy, where the next tournament will be held. Inside, 2 students are training intensely, clashing their wooden swords with force. Meanwhile, one of them prepares to strike a blow under the watchful eye of an instructor passing in the background. Elsewhere, a man remarks, surprised, that he never imagined such a thing. He then reveals that Professor Isabel, from the Magic Academy, has in fact accepted their offer. Intrigued, the young man asks if that's really okay, since it would be like helping the enemy. With a smile, the professor replies that strong opponents are always welcome, whether they are swordsmen or mages. Upon hearing her answer, the man says he feels much more at ease with her decision. The woman watches him leave with a firm and determined gaze. Later, a voice comments that this year's representatives are all quite formidable. Facing them, Isabel states that she's starting to get excited for the exchange tournament. In another courtyard, a light-haired girl casts a wind projectile spell. The spell shoots forward and destroys multiple training targets at once. Right after, the young woman turns and asks what one could possibly conclude from watching such a basic spell. Oscar then approaches and replies that he can tell what kind of mage she is, praising her spells for being careful, precise, and magnificent. With that, the young man says he now understands her capabilities and finally asks her to show him her gravity magic. The young woman then complains that his condescending attitude is starting to get on her nerves. Next, she materializes a large weapon in her hands. When asked about the weapon, she explains she needs to use that staff for her gravity magic, as it makes the magic formula look completely different. Faced with a vision of someone else wielding the staff, the young woman states that she now understands. She then explains that, after all, inherited magic formulas are an absolute secret. Immediately after, a huge magic circle materializes beneath the girl's feet, surprising the young man. However, the spell dissipates in midair, shattering into countless fragments. Exhausted, the young woman falls to the ground and laments that, as she already knew, it wouldn't work. With her head down, she says that he must now understand that helping her is useless. With a smile, Oscar replies that it won't be useless the moment she succeeds. The young woman then asks him why he's trying so hard to help her. The young man answers that he does it because he knows the pain of constantly living a lie. He then adds that, in his case, it was a lie he told himself. Oscar ponders, however, that it's also true the situation won't change if they continue at this pace. With that, Oscar asks if she's sure there are no mistakes in the magic formula. The girl replies that of course not, as she memorized it as if her life depended on it. A quick flashback shows how she dedicated herself to her studies since she was a child. Given this, he wonders if the problem is the amount of mana, or the force used in its activation. Oscar begins to wonder if that might be true, but leaves the thought unfinished. The young woman then laments that the other royals didn't suffer as much, concluding that for her, it's simply impossible. The young man, however, states with conviction that there's no way it's impossible. Surprised by his answer, she asks if he really believes in her. To the girl's astonishment, Oscar answers directly that he doesn't. He then explains that if the right amount of mana is used with the correct formula, the magic will always activate. With a smile, the young man declares that he doesn't believe in her but in magic itself. Hearing that, the girl smiles as she wipes away a tear. Then she asks what he meant by that, commenting that he really is a strange person. Oscar then reflects that her skills as a mage are among the best of her generation. That's why the young man wonders why gravity magic is the only one she can't use. Suddenly, he wonders if that could be the reason. The next instant, the young man turns around with an alarmed look. Without warning, Oscar shoves the girl away, leaving her confused. The young woman then tries to ask what he's doing. In front of her, she notices a sword stuck in the ground. From atop the wall, the boy watches the scene. Then he comments that for a spoiled brat, he's not bad at all. The young woman then supposes that, by their badges, they're the representatives from the Magic Academy. In response, the young man introduces himself as Chad, one of the representatives from the Fencing Academy. Beside him, the girl asks if he will be their opponent in the exchange match. Chad then declares that, since their paths have crossed, it must be fate, and there's no need to wait for the match. Next, the young man challenges them to a fight right there. Suddenly, a man with glasses orders that's enough. The The orange-haired young man turns in the direction of the voice. Behind him, Oscar and the girl also look toward the interruption. Soon, the man with glasses approaches, accompanied by another young man. He then warns Chad that if the violence persists, he will take necessary measures. The other then asks if he really thinks he's capable of doing that. The man with glasses states that he has already memorized every tendency in his movements. The young man then sheathes his dagger. From a distance, Oscar observes the trio of opponents gathered. The young man then concludes that those three are his opponents for the exchange match. On the other side, the trio of opponents groups up, observing the situation. Meanwhile, the blonde-haired young man comments to himself that the girl's face looks familiar. Next, the man with glasses turns to the group and asks what they think they're doing. At that moment, the professor approaches, scolding him for wandering off alone. Surprised, the young man in the blue suit recognizes her, exclaiming, "It's Professor Isabel." The woman then introduces herself, saying she is the instructor in charge of those students. She explains that, as part of the preparation for the exchange match, she brought the students to inspect the venue. With that, the instructor calls for them to leave, announcing they will be going through special training next. Before leaving, the blonde-haired young man casts one last look in their direction. As the others withdraw, the orange-haired young man takes a step forward toward Oscar. The boy then addresses Oscar and asks if he is strong. Next, he brandishes the dagger with a taunting smile on his face. In a swift movement, the tip of the blade is pressed against Oscar's neck. Beside them, the girl watches the scene, unable to react. The aggressor then tells Oscar to make sure he's the vanguard in the match, because next time, he'll drive the dagger into his head. In the distance, a young man with glasses yells for the aggressor, Chad, who responds with a disinterested wave. Then the young man turns to leave, raising the dagger in the air as a final warning. Still shaken, the girl comments that there's something wrong with that guy, stating that against an opponent like that, one life wouldn't be enough. However, she states that her task remains the same regardless of the opponent, and for that, she needs to master gravity magic. With a smile, Oscar raises a finger and says there's something he'd like to test. The girl then asks him in surprise if that was what he wanted her to test. Before her, the small object emits a faint energy. The young man confirms with a smile and instructs her to try using magic with that pen wand. The young woman then questions if he's implying she's a novice, stating that the pen wand is just a tool for beginners. Faced with her reaction, he simply asks if that distinction really matters. Oscar then explains that every wand has its own inherent strengths and weaknesses. He continues, explaining that although the pen wand limits the volume of mana, it makes the flow and intensity much easier to regulate. Therefore, he concludes by asking if she doesn't consider it the ideal tool for practicing spells that haven't been mastered yet. The young woman reflects that the idea of choosing a wand based on the specific magic to be used is a concept she had never considered. Even so, she expresses her doubt about the possibility of using gravity magic with a pen wand like that. Oscar then states that since they're alone, there's no need for her to hide her magic circles. Next, the young man drops a handkerchief and turns his back to her. The girl then confesses that she made an exhaustive effort just to keep up appearances. A memory shows her, as a child, dedicating herself intensely to her studies amidst several books. She reveals that, since then, she has continued to create lies just to live up to everyone's expectations. Faced with this, the young woman declares that, in that case, she will give it a try. The girl then yells that it's all right, because since she has nothing left to lose, she'll try anyway. With his eyes closed, Oscar realizes he can feel the sudden surge of mana. Before him, the young woman's eyes glow with the newly gathered energy. With that, she finally conjures a large magic circle and invokes the gravity dispersion spell. The man quickly charges forward. Facing him, Zazan prepares for combat, wand in hand. The boy jumps back just as the sword is about to reach him. Without wasting a moment, he continues his attack. In response, Zazan immediately conjures an ice wall to defend himself. The magic barrier manages to block the impact of the dark energy attack that follows. Pleased with the scene, the man praises the boy for the successful block. He then congratulates him for making the most progress of anyone in the last week, and the young man thanks him. Soon after, the instructor turns to the princess and says she's next, but he stops himself. His expression suddenly changes, as if he's noticed something unexpected. The girl then addresses him, commenting that he finally seems to have found his resolve. In response to this, the young woman also invokes the powerful gravity dispersion spell. Her magic opens a portal that begins to pull in a white handkerchief from the ground. Watching it all, Oscar reflects that this is true gravity magic, and a human wouldn't stand a chance against it. Meanwhile, the girl beside him remains silent with her eyes closed, concentrating. Noticing her like that, Oscar asks what's wrong and if she's okay. In response, the girl's hand moves slightly as she holds the small object. Suddenly, the young woman casts the gravity dispersion spell, activating a magic circle on the ground. Surprised, the boy shouts, questioning why she didn't keep the magic formula a secret. A small puddle forms on the ground as a voice whispers that she's finally done it. Witnessing the scene, Oscar watches, completely shocked. With tears in her eyes, the girl celebrates finally being able to use gravity magic. Seeing her, the boy reflects that it's natural for her to be so emotional. He then kneels to comfort her, reminding her that she's waited for this moment for a long time. Now on her feet and calmer, the young woman smiles and says it was all thanks to him, thanking him sincerely. The boy then explains that since she managed it with a pen wand, the skill requires delicate control. The girl agrees with him and declares she needs to be able to fight with that staff by the exchange match date. Oscar reflects that since that day, she hasn't been able to use the magic with anything but the pen wand, concluding that all he can do is believe. Beside him, the young woman silently looks away. Suddenly, a cloaked man appears before them, announcing that there's only 1 week left until the exchange match. The man then comments that the boy's staff must be worn out from daily training and advises him to get it properly maintained before the big day. Hearing this advice, Oscar recalls that he was indeed told to stop by there from time to time. With that in mind, the young man decides it might be a good idea to visit Rod's place for the first time in a while. As he walks, he notices the large number of swordsmen nearby and wonders if it's because of the upcoming exchange match. Just then, an armored swordsman walks past him, smiling. The warrior then walks away, continuing down the street. Nearby, another boy seems to remember a certain girl. Walking through the crowd, Oscar reflects that he's sure he's seen a young woman who passed him somewhere before. Suddenly, a desperate scream echoes through the street, with someone calling for help. The crowd turns in shock as they see a little boy running into the middle of the street after his ball. Noticing the commotion, the young man immediately turns to see what's happening. Amidst the panic, a person falls to their knees on the ground, begging for it to stop. Just ahead, a speeding horse charges directly toward the boy, who stands still holding the ball. Without a second thought, Oscar leaps into the crowd and uses his staff to push people out of the way. At that instant, a hooded figure leaps over the carriage, stating they just need a moment. With that, the figure yells for them to stop the carriage. Without wasting time, the boy readies his staff, activating a magic circle. Next, he conjures a fire barrier to protect the little boy. The barrier of flames reflects in the horse's frightened eyes. Upon impact, Oscar uses the strength of his body to stop the animal. At the same time, the mysterious rider pulls hard on the reins to help restrain it. Together, they finally manage to make the animal rear up and stop its advance. With the situation resolved, the mother runs to hug her son, relieved. From atop the horse, the other person comments that the harness seemed to be hurting the animal. Looking at her back, Oscar realizes that the large sword is familiar to him. The rider then notices the boy's fixed gaze and asks if he happens to like swords. At that moment, the young man finally recognizes her face. Then, the stranger claims to remember him, saying the boy is from the Magic Academy. A memory comes to Oscar's mind, and he confirms to himself that he knew he recognized her. He recalls speaking with her in his past life when the young woman asked him the same question. In that memory, Oscar was striking a training dummy with his wooden sword. After destroying the target, the young man stops for a moment, panting. It's at that moment that she approaches and asks if he likes swords. Then, the girl looks at him and starts to say that he's the young man she saw swinging his sword every day without tiring, which is why she became curious. To her surprise, Oscar replies that actually, he doesn't particularly like them. Noticing the girl's reaction, he quickly tries to explain he didn't mean to insult the sword. With a smile, she confesses that she feels the exact same way. Hearing her response, Oscar freezes as she extends her hand toward him. The young woman then introduces herself, saying her name is Chloe. He recalls that was his only conversation with the brilliant student, the Academy's future best swordswoman. Back in the present, the knight asks the exact same question from years ago. Oscar reflects that in his past life, he used the sword to try and forget magic, which is why her words had such an impact on him. The warrior then recognizes him, stating that he's from the Magic Academy. With a smile, the young man holds his staff and replies that this time he prefers magic. Hearing his answer, the warrior smiles and says she agrees with him. With a smile, she repeats that she agrees. Faced with her reaction, Oscar looks at her and begins to ask. He ends up asking if she also likes magic more than swords. The warrior is visibly surprised by the question. After a moment, the young woman confesses that her original wish was actually to become a mage. The young man watches her in silence, paying attention to her story. The girl continues, explaining that a few years ago her village was attacked by monsters, so she had no choice but to pick up a sword to fight. The scene shows the girl alone in the middle of her burning village. Next, she is seen running through the flames, calling for her mother and father. As the girl ran, a knight shouted as he charged into battle. Soon, a monster attacks the knight, who is easily defeated. Seeing this, the girl picks up the fallen knight's sword, causing the creature to turn towards her. She then prepares to face the monster, holding the huge sword with both hands. With a cry, young Chloe charges at the creature, raising her sword to strike. Back in the present, the girl concludes, revealing she didn't become a swordswoman by choice. Oscar watches her finish her story, understanding the situation. Hearing her story, he concludes that she had to fight alone to survive, and that's why she dislikes swords, lamenting how difficult it must have been. The young woman then comments that his reaction was unexpected, making him ask what she meant by that. Then, the girl explains that everyone who hears her story just praises her for being blessed with talent. Those words leave him completely frozen. The young man finally understands why he was so curious about the reason she hates swords. The scene changes to the moment the young woman introduced herself, extending her hand and saying her name was Chloe. As he introduces himself as Oscar, he realizes that this girl is exactly like his past self. He reflects that in his past life he could have comforted her, but now, in this second life, he has gained something new and different. The young man then decides that only he can retrace the paths that should have never been visited again. As they part ways, the girl says she's heading back to the inn, and Oscar confirms he'll see her at the exchange match. Then, the girl walks away, leading a white horse down the street. The young man remains silent, watching her leave. As he watches her, he laments that he can't do anything for her, since sword ki and mana are incompatible, and he can't choose the paths he's already taken again. However, he starts to wonder if there might be an exception. The young man then realizes he is the only person in the world who knows both paths, questioning if there isn't something that only he would be able to find. On the day of the exchange match, someone approaches and asks Oscar why he has such a dazed expression. Not understanding the question, the young man just turns to the person who spoke to him. The other person says they don't know what's been on his mind these past few days, but advises him to focus on what's in front of him today. He adds that since the young man will be in the vanguard, he probably won't even get a chance to participate. Hearing those words, Oscar just remains silent for a moment. As he turns to leave, the other person just says, "My bad." With that, the young man stands up and states that, just as Zazan said, he will focus completely on the exchange match. The scene then shifts to the grand arena where the exchange match will take place. In the stands, the audience is already settling in to watch the event. Nearby, a student tells his classmate the opening ceremony is about to begin, and the other apologizes for being late. Once seated, the young man vents that he's not excited, expecting them to lose again this year, leaving his friend confused. He then explains that mages are, by nature, trained to fight in formation. An image illustrates how they usually fight together to face enemies. The young man argues that fighting one-on-one already puts them at a disadvantage, and the arena's small space only favors swordsmen. He then recalls they lost last year, and the previous generation didn't win either, adding that this year's opponents are different. Apparently, the opposing team has an unbelievable genius among its members. Meanwhile, elsewhere, an instructor explains to Oscar and his classmates that in an elimination tournament, the vanguard is the most crucial yet most disadvantageous role. Not understanding, the young man just repeats the word disadvantageous. The master then clarifies that the vanguard fights first without knowing their opponent, and if they win, they face the next one while already exhausted. Beside him, one of the female students seems to finally grasp the logic behind the explanation. In a serious tone, the instructor states that the vanguard's defeat is practically guaranteed. However, he raises his voice and exclaims that there is an exception. One of the students then gets excited, explaining that this year's exception is Princess Ariel, because with her gravity magic, defeating all three enemies wouldn't be impossible. At this comment, the girl becomes visibly awkward, while Oscar remains silent by her side. It's then revealed that, even after 2 weeks, the young woman hasn't succeeded in using her gravity magic with the concealment staff. In other words, this means she won't be able to use her gravity magic during the competition. Interrupting the conversation, Oscar asks for a moment so the three of them can discuss the fighting order. The instructor agrees, stating that they are the fighters and should therefore decide on an order they're all comfortable with. So, the three of them gather to begin their discussion. Oscar reflects that while what Professor Ruth said makes perfect sense, there's a problem. He concludes that since Ariel can't use her crucial gravity magic, she can't be placed as the vanguard. Faced with this, the young man realizes he has no other choice. Unexpectedly, the other classmate steps forward and states that he'll act as the vanguard himself. The sudden declaration leaves both Oscar and Ariel completely stunned. Worried, the young man asks if he's sure. Recalling that according to the professor, the vanguard, the classmate cuts him off, asking for permission to be a bit bold with his statement. He then turns to the princess and questions her directly, wanting to confirm if she really can't use her gravity magic. Surprised, the girl asks how he knew about that. The classmate replies that he already figured, having seen the two of them talking alone and becoming suspicious. A memory shows him observing Oscar and the princess together from a distance. The revelation of the secret leaves Ariel visibly distressed. The girl then apologizes, saying she didn't mean to deceive him, but the other one says she has nothing to apologize for. The unexpected response leaves her completely confused. The young man explains that those who stand out always have a secret or two, and he knows that feeling well. Another memory reveals him isolated from the others, reinforcing his statement. Back in the present, the classmate concludes that this, therefore, means something very important. He declares that to protect Princess Ariel's secret, the only option is to win. Oscar then turns to him and proposes they win together, but adds that if he happens to lose, the other will be the only one who can protect her. Seriously, the classmate asks if he understands the responsibility he's taking on. Without hesitation, the young man points directly at his classmate. With a confident smile, he confirms and declares that the two of them will win the exchange match together. The young man's confidence, however, is met with a completely indifferent expression from the other. Faced with the proposal, the classmate simply scoffs in disdain. The two simply agree and are ready. Soon, an announcement echoes through the arena, declaring that the first match of the Magic Swords exchange is about to begin. Then, one of the competitors walks with firm steps toward the center. Already in the arena, the adversary laments that his opponent isn't Oscar, as he was the one he wanted to fight. His opponent, however, is Zazan, who stares at him seriously. Faced with the taunt, he replies that to face the one he wants, all the other has to do is defeat him first. With a smirk, the young man ironically asks if that's really the situation. Without wasting any more time, he unsheathes his sword with a swift motion. Immediately, the competitor lunges forward in a surprise attack, ignoring the rules. From the stands, the crowd shouts in shock, pointing out that the signal to start the match hasn't been given yet. The attack, however, is instantly blocked by a blast of energy. Despite the defense, the attacker just smiles, satisfied with the reaction he provoked. With a magic circle formed in front of him, his opponent admits he might actually have some fun with this fight.